Would you all please stand, salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Linda Avanzado. Belvoid Benson.
Here.
Larry Cerisi.
Here.
William Mudge.
Present.
Kimberly Page. Here. Joe Thompson.
Here.
Richard Welsh.
Here.
Julia Held. Here. Michael Avanzado.
Here.
Thank you.
Clerk, please read the calendars for May, June.
May 30th, Memorial Day, all schools and offices closed. May 31st, Budget Subcommittee meeting, 1 p.m., Central Administration Building. June 6th, Policy Subcommittee meeting, 1 p.m., Central Administration Building. June 6th, CLAC meeting, 7 p.m., Central Administration Building. June 8th, Wellness Subcommittee meeting, 3:30 p.m., Central Ad Building. June 9th, Quidnesset Japan Benefit Concert, 6:30 p.m., Quidnesset. June 10th, North Kingstown High School graduation, 6 p.m., URI Ryan Center. June 14th, retiree reception at 6:15, followed by a school committee work session at 7 p.m. at the high school. June 21st, special school committee meeting regarding the Davisville Elementary School building, that's 7 p.m. at Davisville Middle School. June 23rd, last day of school. June 28th, school committee business meeting, 7 p.m., North Kingstown High School.
Thank you. Next we have
Question, please.
Mr. Mudge.
Yes. On the agenda here of the calendar, I noticed there was a meeting on the 17th concerning the IT consolidation effort. Was that a IT consolidation meeting? And if it was, it should have been on the agenda. And I would have thought that as the school committee's rep to the IT committee, I would have been invited to the meeting, which I was not.
Mr. Mudge, that was not a meeting of consolidation. That was a meeting between the representatives from the town council and school committee, as well as the superintendent of schools and the town manager, to meet with the IT consultant.
Well, being as I'm on the IT committee, wouldn't you think that I would be invited?
If you had been to the meeting when the vote was taken as to who was going to represent the school committee for consolidation, you would know that I was nominated and elected by the Consolidation Committee to represent the school committee in any relationships with the IT consultant.
Oh, so when I was elected or appointed to be on the IT Consolidation Committee, that must be a different committee then.
Mr. Cerisi?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Can we please continue with the agenda? This is a discussion that subcommittee will need to hold. It's certainly not going to get resolved with this body tonight.
Oh, excuse me, I'm asking, does IT committee meetings or Consolidation Committee meetings, are they subject being placed on the agenda and noticed to all, including the public?
IT meetings, Consolidation Committee meetings, that was not a Consolidation Committee meeting.
Well, you just told me it was an IT
With citizens'
meeting.
comments. Now is the time for citizens' comments.
Mr. Chairman, did you, as the chairman, and Mr. Councilman Stan meet privately with the contractor?
It's not on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, can we please continue on with the agenda?
Thank you.
Point of order.
Yes, Mrs. Benson?
The point of order is let the duly certified member complete his statement.
He did.
I'm asking a question that wasn't answered. Did you meet privately with Mr. Stan with the contractor? And if you did, for what purpose?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask again, can we please continue on with the agenda? I don't know what this interrogatory is for, but it has nothing to do with what's on our agenda tonight. Can we please continue on with the agenda? If he'd like to question you on this, you guys can do it on your own time. Please continue.
Thank you.
You're not going to answer the question then? Thank you. I got your answer.
We now have citizens' comments, which is 15 minutes devoted to citizens talking about school committee, school department items. We please ask you to limit your time. We have a number of people that wish to speak. There's 17 on the list. I would ask that you keep your speaking to 2 minutes so that we have a chance to hear everyone and move on with our lengthy agenda. The first person that is signed up is Sandy Blankenship.
Sandy Blankenship, President of the NKESP. Due to the scope and nature of the privatization under consideration, the committee is required to negotiate the decision with the union. Having said that, it is a sad state of affairs in NK lately. It has been reported to union leadership that a member of the school committee is being very vocal about union busting. It appears that the food service manager was approached by a school committee member and suggested that her food service employees disaffiliate from the union if they did not want to be privatized. If such statements were made, they would constitute an unfair labor practice, and that the union will pay close attention for any such tactics to intimidate employees. Furthermore, anyone who knows anything about union affiliation will tell you that the suggestion is misleading information, as a majority of the union must disaffiliate, not a small group. Also, if a majority of the union members did vote to disaffiliate, they would become at-will employees for 1 year with no union backing or funds for grievances or privatization efforts. Why would any union member want to put themselves in that position? It is also a sad state of affairs when no one from administration attended the town council meeting where money was about to be cut from the requested school budget amount. This was an incredibly important town council meeting. I have been asked by a number of people, where was administration? Many union members showed up and several school committee members, but no one from school administration. In addition, why is it that I had to put a petition in motion with my ESP members to get signatures for a referendum to try to get dollars for the school budget to save jobs and programs? Shouldn't we all care about the town not funding the school budget? Why is it that you would rather privatize, cut and/or reduce vital clerical, custodial, maintenance, minibuses, and food service support positions rather than find money to keep these loyal, dedicated, and veteran employees? Everyone knows that private companies are for profit, and they will make money from you. Furthermore, they have substandard practices as well as workers, and you know they lowball estimates to get into schools. There is never a real savings with private companies, yet a lot of time and energy is put into that effort rather than trying to save our ESP employees. Why isn't the cost of the school lunches going up? They haven't been raised in years, and perhaps that would make up some of the money needed. Why didn't the school committee and administration work with the union to get a referendum? It does not appear that the private sector-minded administration is interested in doing anything that would save the loyal ESP employees due to their union affiliation. The old saying is, if it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, then it must be a duck. Therefore, if it sounds, feels, and appears like union busting, then it's probably union busting. Please stop the divisive remarks aimed at our ESP members. We have just begun the negotiations process. We want our opportunity to negotiate in good faith with the administration and the school committee. Let us be part of the solution and not the problem. Help us in our effort to save vital school personnel and programs. Join us in our effort to get a referendum to fund the schools the way they should be funded. We need to work together to maintain the integrity of our school community. By the way, as of this afternoon, and in less than a week, our ESP group collected enough signatures for a referendum. That's NK. That's NK ESP, working 110% to get the job done, as always. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Jenny Tusik. Did I say your name correctly?
There's it there.
Hi, I'm Jenny Tosick, 84 Main Street, and I am the Media Center clerk at the high school here. So primarily, I'm here to talk about clerks, and I will be brief, but I do have a couple of other things to say. We clerks here at the high school and in the other schools are 12-month employees. We work hard all year, not just 10 months out of the year. We work hard all year. There are things that have to be done when there aren't students and teachers here. We cannot possibly do this in 10 months. I'm not sure how our jobs are any different than the clerks at the administration building that would still work 12 months out of the year. We all have big jobs. And since I've been here, I was hired here after working as a consultant for 14 years at Fishing Cove School in the Links program. I've been here now for 7 years, so I've been here for a long time in this school department. And since I've been here in 2004, we've cut 2 full-time clerks from our staff here, and you want to cut another one now and cut us to 10 months. There is no way we will ever be able to get this school ready to open if our time is cut. There's one other thing I want to touch on here, well, 2 other things. One is also, I want to talk about the Media Center in general. Not only are you talking about cutting the Media Center clerk, who is a clerk in this high school, to 10 months, you're talking about cutting one of our librarians to a .5 position. We touch every single student in the entire school. The hub of the school is the Media Center. If you could only see how it runs, it's incredible. I don't know how we can possibly cut down the size of it. There are sometimes when the three of us never sit down, never stop moving, and it's a very busy place. Also, I want to mention one other thing, and this has to do with outsourcing other people. There's a certain amount of pride that goes into everybody's job every day. And when you no longer have that pride in your work because you're just working for a big corporation and you're no longer working for the school that you love, it's going to show a huge difference. We won't have the same. We personally care about our product, and our product is students. Thank you.
Teresa Hawkins.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Hawkins. I live on Curzak Road. I've lived in North Kingstown for over 50 years, and this fall it will be my 19th year working for the North Kingstown School Department. I am the high school guidance clerk whose position may be dissolved due to the budget cuts. I respectfully ask that this committee does not look at this cut solely on the salary saved. The North Kingstown High School Guidance Office is very busy year-round and depends on its clerks to keep it running effectively and efficiently. This clerk position is not just a receptionist that helps the students and parents as needed. Although this clerk answers and directs all incoming calls and is the front desk of the office, the job entails much more. Our first obligation is to assist all 10 staff personnel associated with the guidance, the 6 counselors, school psychologists, social worker, special ed coordinator, the school to career coordinator, director of guidance, and the assistant principal of teaching and learning. From a budget standpoint, it may seem overstaffed with 3 clerks, but 1 clerk is a data entry clerk who works extensively with the students' record keeping, report cards, and transcripts, and most importantly, the scheduling of all students and all teachers. This position has duties that are separate from the guidance office clerks. In addition to all the day-to-day responsibilities, the two clerks also work directly with the assistant principal during NECAP testing, an extensive job starting with preparation of materials, distribution during testing, inventory daily, and monitoring the security practice required by the state. Every fall, over 60 college visits are scheduled and appointments are set up for the seniors through me. We are solely responsible for the college application procedures and the scholarship process, as well as helping to organize and participate in Honors Night. We also work with the PSAT, SAT, and the AP coordinator during the year, helping to prepare for the testing periods. Once a student passes through the doors at North Kingstown High School, we are responsible for retaining their transcripts and forwarding all required information that may be requested, some of which are still on microfiche and must be retyped in order to process. In closing, I would like to note that several years ago, this office was staffed by one clerk, and the following year it was determined that additional clerk was needed to efficiently run the guidance office. I respectfully ask that you reconsider. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jay Romano.
My name is Justin Romano. I'm a resident, I'm a taxpayer. I'm a parent of a student going to your school, going to my schools here. And I'm an employee of the school department. I'm one of your custodians. Please look at my face, sir. I'm one of the guys who is just going to get outsourced. I'm here to speak, honestly, for everybody in ESP. Do you know what it even means? Educational support personnel. We support education. Approximately 200 of us. Custodians, maintenance people, kitchen people, buses, paraprofessionals. All of us. All of the guys you rarely kind of like not see. That's why I want you to look at us. I want them also to stand up. Everybody in ESP, just stand up. Look at them. 200 of us. And all you want to do is cut, cut, cut. ESP does a lot of logistics behind the scenes. Just take this building. Take this room. You had 1,500 kids scoffing food this afternoon. You had detention for 2 hours after that. Then you had IT come in and set up. And they still needed help to set up. Then you had your setup here all day long. But look at the floor. God love you. Cut, cut, cut. It seems to me that the school committee and the administration get together and they put a suggestion list together and they give it to Mr. Thornton. And Mr. Thornton makes a list of cuts, cuts, cuts. Do me a favor, guys. Everybody, please do me one favor. Do us all one favor. Get rid of 2 words. RFP. And get rid of outsourcing, please. And use words like negotiation, compromise. Let's sit at the table, and as I said before at this microphone, I know we can get it to work a lot smoother. We can tweak us. We know we can be tweaked. We know we can. You could too, believe me. Don't you know, 200 people, the body of ESP is your biggest asset. We see the students, we see the teachers, we see the buildings every day. Do you? I don't know. ESP knows your students. It knows everything that goes on in your buildings. All you want to do is cut, 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 and bring in someone new, and you're going to save money. Come on. Think of the startup time. You're going to bring in 50 people to clean your building. Just the startup time alone, it's going to take them a year to figure out what the blazes they're doing for 7 buildings. Come on, get with the program. Don't use RIFs or RFPs anymore. Get that word out of the vocabulary here. Just negotiate with us. We're human beings. We're not just numbers. We put every day of our life here because we like it. You get some company from wherever it is, Chicago, And you're going to get 30 people in here one day doing a job and 30 different people the next week doing a job. And then some kid's going to get locked out of a room and he needs to have a key to get into it. Where the blazes are you going to go to even ask who to get the key? Thank you for your time. Consider 200 ESP people you don't even know that make your buildings work a heck of a lot smoother. Thank you.
Marissa Charbonneau, is it? And Hartman? And then, excuse me, Marissa, just a second. And if Ken Hartman would come forward so that we can save some time. Thank you. Go ahead, Marissa.
All set?
Go ahead.
My name is Marissa Charbonneau. I live here in North Kingstown. I've been working for the school department for 15 years. I love what I'm doing, and I'm hoping to continue to work with this administration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Renee Hartman. I've lived in North Kingstown my whole life, and I work here in the high school. I've worked here for 8 years. I love my job. I love working with these kids, and I'm willing to work with you to make it work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Susan Zahora. I've worked 16 years with the school department, lived 30 years in North Kingstown, raised 3 kids here, now 2 grandchildren. I've enjoyed every minute, enjoy the wellness program with the kids, the teaching new foods, and all the fun things every day. I'm willing to work with the administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Julia Moon, and then Susan Tavares.
Hi, my name is Julia Moon. I'm a lifetime resident of North Kingstown, and I've been 12 years with this school. I have 2 kids, and they went through all the school department in North Kingston School and graduated to high school. And we're willing to work with you guys to try to keep our jobs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Susan Tavares. What can I say that hasn't been said already? We are willing to work. I mean, we love this town. I've put 3 children through the school department. We love this town. We've built this town. All of us, the whole ESP has built this town. People move here. People coming into the state, they say, where are we going to go? Wow, North Kingston has a great school system. Let's check the town out. Wow, the town is really nice, too. Guess what? We're moving there. That's what it's all about. And we take care of your children. It's not just the teachers. It's the paras. It's the janitors. It's us. We take good care of the kids. We make sure they're fed properly all day, because how can they concentrate in school if they're not being fed properly? I watch every day. I watch kids who aren't being fed properly, and I do something about it. I make sure the right people know to go and find out what's going on. Why isn't this student coming to school without food or money? And I get to the bottom of it, and I make sure that student is taken care of. By 3 days max, I make sure that kid is okay. But I also have a letter from one of my ladies who cannot be here this evening, and it's really well written, and I'd like to read it to you. Dear School Committee, I am writing to you because I could not make the meeting due to obligations with my children. Some of you know me, some of you do not. I am a lifelong resident of North Kingstown, a registered taxpayer with 3 children, 1 who has graduated, 2 more at the middle school, and an employee with food services. I have always tried to see both sides before I jump to conclusions. I do understand that you are in a difficult position with the budget. I would like you to consider that we are all hardworking, dedicated employees in a department that has been continually trying to stay proactive with improvements and cost effectiveness. We are ahead of many towns in choice, quality, and nutrition. I am aware of the statements being said on the cost benefits going with a private company, but in the numbered standards and options of food and quality of service is not shown. We are your friends, neighbors, constituents. So So what affects us affects you. What I'm asking is, while considering the figures, also consider everything else your decision would affect as well. We try to work with the children to teach them skills that can use in everyday life as well. Special education, behavior, and civic classes work with us and have achieved great success and greater awareness for what our field entails. Sincerely, Barbara Hammock.
Thank you. Linda Law, and then Jason Dwyer, or Dyer.
Good evening. I'm Linda Law. I'm the librarian at Wickford Middle School. I am here tonight because I am concerned about the proposed cut of a librarian and the consequent reduction in library services. It bothers me that nobody has sat down with the librarians to find out what these cuts really mean. Information literacy is not just a buzzword. It is the core of the library curriculum. We guide students in selecting appropriate resources. We give them tools to evaluate those resources, and we teach them to use information in a meaningful way. I have to look at my notes now because I'm super nervous. This is a lifelong skill. It's as valid for the second grader who wants to learn about dinosaurs as it is for the high school senior who is doing their project on stem cell research. In the absence of the librarian, I am wondering who is going to guide this generation of digital learners through the overload of Internet data? Who is going to match curriculum needs with the appropriate resources? And who is going to open the world to faraway places through a good book? I'm proud to be a librarian, and I can say that about my fellow librarians. We take an important role in shaping students who will succeed beyond our classroom doors. We partner in their education, and I would like you to respectfully consider that partnership as you make your budget deliberations. Thank you.
How you doing? I'm Jay Dyer, 57 Lake Drive. I've been a lifelong resident of North Kingstown, and I've been working for the school department as the driver for 3 years. And I want to say that I work with a bunch of great people, both in food service and as the custodial staff, and what they do every day as far as food and keeping everything clean as far as custodians is great. And, you know, outsourcing it would not be good. And we're willing to work with you guys. Thank you.
Belinda Andrews and Joy Arnold.
I just want to say that I've worked for the food in the food department for 21 years, and I'm willing to negotiate to save our jobs. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Joy Arnold, and I'm one of the media specialists here at the high school. I actually have something I'd like to pass out, if I could give it to you, Dr. Arjane. I had something a lot longer prepared, and I'm trying to cut some of it out to keep it as short as possible. So I want to address the high school media specifically because obviously that's the area that I'm most familiar with, and explain to you how it works a little bit and what the halftime cut would do to our schedule and the services to the students. The Media Center is on a flexible schedule, meaning we have no specifically scheduled classes. Teachers sign up based on their students' needs for the curriculum. Recently, we tallied the percentage of time that the Media Center is booked in respect to the number of possible openings each week. We found that 55% of the year we are at or above 75% capacity, and 27% of the time we are 100% or above capacity. The statistic is significant because 55% of the time we are over the 75% you propose to cut us to. So it's going to be impossible to cover the amount of instruction that we do in the high school presently. For instance, and I want to paint a little bit of a picture for you, in September when the new 9th grade comes in, every 9th grader gets an orientation to the Media Center. This orientation is a 2-class period event in which students actively use all parts of the Media Center and figure out themselves around the space. While they've been taught basic library skills throughout their schooling, the way that they will be expected to use the Media Center in the high school is a new experience. The way they'll research and the way they attach it to their classes and use it for their classes is different. In that activity, they do things from using our whole library to taking advantages of research databases that are available from the North Kingstown Free Library and the research databases that they have there, and then we hit things like plagiarism. That's important because they immediately go into the 9th grade lab report in earth science, which is their first graduation requirement. The plagiarism activity then is followed up by a plagiarism contract, which then goes home and they have signed and their parents sign it. This is something they see every single year from the Media Center. They get instruction on plagiarism. It's tied into the curriculum, into these PVGR assignments that they have. It's something that we really spend a lot of time on. We spend most of the first 2 months of school teaching 2 classes, both media specialists, 2 classes every period, every day of every week. It takes us that much to get through all 9th grade students. There is absolutely no way that every 9th grader would get an orientation to our library and to these important skills without 2 media specialists. It logistically is not possible. At the same time as that 9th grade orientation is going on, there are approximately 400 seniors with their teachers trying to get into the Media Center to begin research on the topic for their senior exhibition. So we're doing all of 9th grade and trying to get most of the seniors in at the same time. A lot of classes going through there. I don't know the exact number. Approximately 1,650 students we had this year. That would be approximately 600 students over what the old BEP would have said required 2 librarians. I completely understand that the staffing requirements have been removed from the BEP. However, that does not change the logistics of teaching that many students and the number of teachers required to do so. The Board of Regents can take out the requirements, but it is up to school districts to continue to provide a quality library program to their students, and that is not possible without enough teachers. We are proud of the amount of instruction that our students get in this Media Center, and we think we do a good job of getting our students ready to complete their assignments. These graduation by proficiency assignments are necessitating the integration of library skills regularly into the content areas. For instance, there is a time when 10th grade American Lit classes are doing literary criticism paper. 11th grade history classes are starting their papers, and 11th graders are doing their annotated bibliography assignment. All of this is going on at the same time. It is double booked every period, every day, every week for, say, 6 weeks at a time. It's impossible to do the amount of instruction with less media specialists. At a time when we've moved to this type of research and project-based assignments, when students need to be taught how to evaluate sources and choose the best source for a project, and when non-authoritative information is so rampantly available and most easily accessible to students, library media specialists have been more necessary than in the past. The majority of the Internet is not authoritative, yet our students regularly conduct research on the Internet. They accept whatever information they get there and use the information in academic work. The basic instruction they receive from us about the research process is a curriculum they will get no place else in their school career. We believe that we are now seeing a difference not only in the ability of our students, for example, to cite sources using MLA, but their desire to do so and do so correctly. We've seen over the past couple of years a huge growth in our students in the research process. I believe that the skills that we teach are the foundation of success in every other curriculum area, but we are also much more to our students. We help them choose topics, find materials, write, rewrite, cite, use media, and practice presentation. We help teachers reinforce their curriculum through research and perhaps teach the same old, a new way. In order to do this with a school the size of North Kingstown High School and make sure that every student is taught these skills, 2 media specialists are needed. With the reduction in staff, the instruction would be spotty throughout the student body, and the quality and effectiveness of the anchor assignments and PVGR assignments, to which we are now mandated, will be diminished. These assignments may also face some revision in some areas because the Media Center plays such an important role in so many of them. Lastly, as we are coming up on another NEAS committee visit, one of the things that NEAS pays attention to and criticizes the lack of extended hours in the Media Center. Since our last visit, we have changed to a staggered schedule where one of us comes in later and stays later. Pam Rowland comes in at 8:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays to allow our students 4 hours after school with access to our Media Center and to a librarian. Again, we have found an increase in the use of the Media Center at these time for the purpose of completing anchor assignments and these PBGR assignments. Much of her time is spent after schools answering questions about MLA, creating works cited sheets, scanning anchor assignments, locating and accessing materials. These extended hours will not be available to students with the proposed reduction in staff. I believe that we have a good library program. In my experience, when attending workshops or conferences or being engaged in conversations with friends that teach about the lessons we give in our Media Center, people are always impressed. These teachers express how they wish they had media specialists in their schools that were as involved in the process of teaching and learning in their school. I am very proud of that fact. I think we do a lot of instruction here. I think we do a really good job of getting our students ready, and I think we're very involved with all of our content areas, and I really hope that we can continue to provide those services. Thank you.
Nancy Saccone, Amanda McHugh, and then Allie Murray.
Good evening. Having to eliminate services from a budget is no easy task. Hard decisions have to be made. We get that. By proposing to outsource the custodial and food service staff in minibuses, you're not just cutting the budget. You are eliminating the livelihood of 60-plus employees. Besides the custodial and food service in the minibuses, the budget proposal also includes a drastic reduction in the school clerk's hours, eliminating several full-time teachers, cutting a speech pathologist, and not hiring a greatly needed social worker. Also troubling is the mere 6% reduction in the $500,000 sports budget, which amounts to a measly savings of $30,000. I didn't notice any cuts at the administrative level. Perhaps I'm mistaken? The lowest paid sector of the NKSD workforce stands to be the most severely impacted group. Dr. Thornton, I do commend you. A few weeks ago, I saw you walking around Hamilton Elementary, where I am a para. It was nice to see you out and about, not in a meeting in an office somewhere, but walking the halls, interacting with teachers and kids. I ask all of you, before you decide what you are going to eliminate from the budget, please come into our buildings. Don't just look at these jobs as items on your budget. Come in, spend some time, and look around. Witness exactly what that line item looks like and does to contribute to the daily functioning of the North Kingstown school community. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amanda McHugh.
I'm Allie Murray.
I'm Spencer Thorpe.
We're here to say that we believe our lunch program provides the best quality food they can.
We actually had an opportunity to work with the lunch staff during the school day to help make food, and we originally thought that, they only come here like right before lunch, pop it in a microwave, and serve it. Nope, not at all. They make almost every single meal from scratch, and we were here way before the school day, and we worked very, very hard. And they buy the best food, have the best food for the very little budget they have. And something else that I notice a lot is that in the sandwich line, there's supposed to be 2 people working to make sandwiches. But something that I notice is that if they see that there's a very long line and another staff will immediately come and help to make sure that everyone has enough time to eat their lunch. And something that they don't have to do, but they do anyway because they truly, truly care about everyone and their satisfaction for the food. So with this and many other reasons why, we believe that it would be a very big mistake to resort to outsourcing for not only the lunch staff, but for every other staff in North Kingstown High School.
As a student speaking for fellow students, we believe it is worth paying more because our lunch program cares about what we eat. I think we have the better food over a company who cares more about profit than the student satisfaction. I also believe that the maintenance and the clerks and the librarians and everyone else that works here is doing the best job they can, better than anybody else that if they came in here and tried to work, they couldn't do better than what they're doing now. I see them every day. They're doing what they can, like, to the best of their ability. The janitors come to my games. That's how much they care. They come to my games. 5 of my games, they've been to my games. How many janitors do you know that come to a school's game? You don't.
As a student, I buy food every single day from this cafeteria, and I just wanted to say if you outsource our lunch crew, I can guarantee you will not, better food will not be coming out of those doors right behind you, and most likely it will taste like cardboard. So I am completely against outsourcing the lunch crew. That's all.
Jay Walsh. That wasn't intentional.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In this era of school reform, we often hear the phrase data-driven decisions. But what you can't easily do is collect the data on the kind of impacts that custodian workers and cafeteria workers and maintenance workers and librarians and clerks make on students' lives every single day. Any decisions you make to cut librarians, clerks, custodians, maintenance workers, or cafeteria staff has an impact on the students. Cafeteria workers and maintenance workers and custodial staff are parents in the district. They're often alumni of the district. They live in the district. They are the fabric that holds the community together in many ways. Making a decision to save a few pennies by hiring a company from Chicago, Illinois, doesn't just save on the budget, it destroys the community. They have an impact on teaching. As one of the women that works in the cafeteria talked about, they feed the students breakfast and lunch every day. We know from research, data-driven decision-making, that students eating nutritious meals helps them learn. If we don't provide high-quality breakfast and high-quality lunch here, student academic performance is going to decrease. The work that the custodial staff and the maintenance staff makes it possible for me and other teachers in the district to do so that we can educate students effectively. It'll also have an impact on the community. In a very narrow way, we can think about saving on one line item in a budget. But what we don't think about when we do that is the impact it has on community businesses. If you accept RFPs to privatize any of these positions, what you're doing, instead of putting money into the pockets of families in North Kingstown so that they can provide for their families and buy stuff at Shartner's Farm on Main Street in Wickford, you're instead subsidizing some CEO to go on a spending spree on Michigan Avenue in Chicago. Finally, as school committee members, you have a public responsibility. First, you have an obligation, a legal obligation, to negotiate with the unions that are employed in this district. Secondly, you have an obligation to provide the best public schools that you can. And this final comment does not apply to every member of the school committee, but it applies to some of you. Some of you have publicly stated that schools don't need more money, they need less money. And for those of you who have made those statements, I think you have two choices. One, you can either come clean to the entire town of North Kingstown and tell them that the reason you're on the school committee is to undermine public education, or you can resign your position as a school committee member. Thank you.
That concludes public comment for this evening's meeting. We don't ordinarily respond from this table on citizens' comments. We take the information and we use it further on in our deliberations about things and how we want to go forward with planning the school department. I am going to, however, I'll ask each member if they would like to have something to say with respect to what you folks have brought to us tonight. I do want to start, however, and say I wish you folks came to the proper meeting place. We are left with the task of trying to figure out how we spend the money that's been allotted by the town council. We asked for $713,000. We got zero. Now, that wasn't our choice. We made the best presentation we could. We have to now come up with the cuts that nobody wants, including the people on this school committee and the superintendent, in order to meet our budget, which was set by the town council. Now, if you read the newspaper last week, and hopefully, or the week before, and if you read the newspaper on Thursday, you will see a letter there from me which relates to the priorities set by the town council. If you're a resident of town, you probably know that early on in their situation with the budget, they talked about eliminating the dog pound and eliminating recycling. Now, I'm not against either, okay? But they reinstated both at the tune of $590,000. Now, prior to that, they unanimously approved going to bond in November to put artificial turf at McGinn Park for $850,000. I ask you folks, I agree with what you have said. I don't believe there's a person on this committee that disagrees with the quality of our personnel and what they do for us. The least appreciated probably are the folks in ESP. That doesn't mean that we can run without them, and that doesn't mean that there are those of us who understand just exactly what you bring every day to the school system. But we're not in control here. That you have to understand. We don't have to like these cuts. We don't. Your problem is you should have been addressing the town council. Last year, budget time, there was a different method of how we went to our budget. Y'all came, and parents and students, to Davisville Middle School, and the council, along with the school committee, sat there and listened intently to everything that was said, and no cut was made. This year, they changed the process so that the town council would not have to listen to you, the employees, you, the parents, and you, the students. All I can say is, all of you, attend the next town council meeting if you like. We have a job to do. We don't have to like it. We will work at it very diligently. We need you to understand we are not villains here. We are trying to do the best thing for why we are here, and that's to do the best job for the town, the students, and the taxpayers, and the employees collectively. Appreciate the position that we have been put in along with yourselves. Now, I will ask, is there anyone who wants to have anything to say? Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, what I'd like to suggest, after we've each had an opportunity to comment, if there's no objection from my colleagues, if we could move straight into unfinished business, which is the superintendent's report and the school budget, being that that's with public comment widely addressed tonight, was the school budget. So I would ask if there's no objections after we finish with our comments, if we could move right into those agenda items. I know that's what everyone is here for tonight, so I would ask that we could get right to that. Secondly, I'd just like to say, reiterate some of what Mr. Welch just said. Well said by the members of the community, well spoken, and I'm proud to hear a lot of the things that I heard tonight. Just a quick timeline for those of you who are not aware, and I believe most of you are aware. Back in November of 2010, the superintendent and his team started putting together this budget that we're working on now. In January 2011, it was presented to the school committee, and the school committee as a body began their work on it. That budget asked for approximately $720,000 of additional funding from the town council. February 2011, the school committee voted to finalize their budget. In that budget, again, the request was approximately $720,000 from the town council, additional money from the town council. That's the budget this committee voted for. That's the budget that was sent off to the town council. Back in January, when the superintendent proposed his original budget, none of these cuts that we're looking at tonight were in that budget. All these cuts that the superintendent has recommended to the school committee are a result of receiving $0 new dollars from the town council. None of this was being discussed on the onset. This discussion is a result of receiving $0 new dollars. Make no mistake about that. Back in January, the superintendent also prepared a list and presented it to the school committee at a school committee meeting of what cuts we would have to make if we don't receive any new dollars from the town council. Many, if not all of this, was on that list. So this committee knew full well what we would be looking at if we didn't receive any new dollars from the town council, and the public knew full well what we would be faced with if we didn't receive any new dollars from the town council. More importantly, the council knew that. In May 2011, the council voted on the school department's budget, and as you've heard, it included no new dollars. Thus, we have this list in front of us now to consider. I'm kind of at a loss to understand the council's philosophy. They spared the dog kennel but cut the schools, so I guess if you were an outsider looking at North Kingstown, you would say the dog kennel comes before the kids, is basically the message I got from that vote that night. More disappointing to me is we have one of our school committee members made a motion earlier on during the budget to cut $6 million from the school budget. We're only looking at $700,000 tonight. I could only imagine what we'd be discussing if it was a $6 million cut. That motion failed because there was no second to the motion, so that didn't pass. Even more disappointingly, two of our school committee members, which a member from the audience referenced earlier, went in front of the town council during their budget deliberations and advocated that the schools not receive any additional dollars. That's their right. They're entitled to that. That's their position. I don't agree with the position, but they're entitled to it. So that's certainly not helping the cause. So make no mistake about it, this was not part of the superintendent's original proposal. This is what we're looking at tonight. I just wanted to be clear on the history of the process. This is my 5th year on the committee, my 5th year making budget cuts. It's not fun, nothing that any of us want to do. As the chairman said earlier, myself, the chairman, the superintendent, several other members of the committee, several parents in the community put some information out to the community in emails and asked people to get out there to the budget meetings and advocate for the schools. Sadly, the time to do that was in front of the town council. I did see a large showing of ESP people at those town council meetings advocating for the schools. I didn't see the turnout that I would have liked to see from the community, for whatever the reasons may be. But the horse is already out of the barn, and now this is what we're faced to work with. So, excuse me. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to have something to say? Yes. Mr. Mudge?
Excuse me, Ms. Pensico, you go first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, I would like to thank all of the people who came out and who spoke. Each one of you had a bit of wisdom. It was so refreshing to see you speak of the number of years that you've lived in this town, that you've paid tax in this town. And one lady in particular, I said to the gentleman next to me, her father was a janitor when it wasn't popular to be a janitor. Those jobs went begging. They have always worked and done things for the town. Solid citizens. It is a bad thing to have to cut, and cut is something we don't like. I can only speak for myself. I've made the statement once before. No teachers, and along with teachers it goes auxiliary help, and no cafeteria workers. I've lived in this town. Some of you that spoke, Justin, you were good. I've been knowing you since you were a boy. You were good. Some of you that spoke, you know that children have always been first. But we are in a state in our economy that we can't make threats about things. I can't remember when in North Kingstown, when budget time was, before my day on the school committee, it was always sports. They wore that out, and it went to something else. Then they came to cafeteria. But I maintain, and I still maintain, all of us are going through a tight period in America. If we lived off a certain amount last year, why can't we do the same thing this year? That's my question, and nobody has never answered it. Taxes, we all hate. Nobody likes to pay taxes. But education is the future of America. I was reading just a week ago an article in the paper where America used to be one of the leading countries in the education of its students in science, math, and other things. We were leaders. We are way down the line now because money doesn't educate a child. Neither does buildings. It is a good, solid community and good teachers. We can prove that by what happened at one of the oldest schools in town, Wickford Junior High, who made a standing in the state and went to the national. Librarians, some 7 years ago, we were discussing the importance of librarians. They will always be needed. Food service, I've known for years, a hungry child cannot learn. I was noted for, when I was teaching, to keep crackers in my drawer and something for kids. You cannot teach a hungry child. Every one of you are important to the education of these children. But you must remember, North Kingstown and the state of Rhode Island has the highest percentage of senior population of any state in the New England states, Rhode Island. People tend to say, I've gotten my kids out of school, I paid my debt. We don't want anybody to be put out of homes, and I still say that with careful planning, we can maintain the same status quo that we had last year with just a little bit. Because everything has gone up. So has education. Thank you for coming, and thank you for expressing yourself. That's what democracy is all about. Thank you.
Next.
We've all learned a lot from you via your letters, via your emails, your telephone calls, and going around town and having you speak to us. I've come to a great appreciation for what does go on with the ESP, and I've been in several of the cafeterias, eaten there. One of the suggestions was mentioned tonight was perhaps we could close some of this budget gap with a little bit of an increased price of the food. I also want to say, Jay Romano, I did hear you. I heard you tonight, and I listened. I heard you when you spoke to us again in the auditorium. And at that time, we weren't allowed to speak back. We weren't allowed to answer back. And what I felt like saying to you then was the same thing that I felt tonight, was I think you're making an assumption that by going for an RFP, that automatically means you're going to lose your job. And that is not any of our intention. It certainly isn't my intention. But we're not, because of contract negotiations that we're involved in, I don't think we can say too much more than that. But those of you that I've seen around in the town who have told me that how nervous and how worried you are about losing your jobs, I tried to point out the other night when Mr. Grundy was up talking about the questionnaires that they handed out to the companies who came in. I had him read the first question that was on the list, which was dealing with, will the companies hire the people who are doing the jobs now? So I think to automatically assume and to spread the word amongst yourselves that people are going to automatically lose their jobs is not helpful to the whole process. And one of the things that when I was running, and Jay, you pointed it out very accurately, that I was one of the ones that ran on the fact that we could cut some of the excess money in the school budget out of a $60 million budget. And you're going to hear me speak a little bit later tonight. And interestingly enough, one of the things that I'm going to speak to is the fact that we're subsidizing something in the range of $800,000 on this one item alone, which I will speak to. I don't see that item on that list of cuts presented by the superintendent. So whenever I'm able to do whatever influence I can, because I'm only 1/7 of this committee, but whenever I'm able to try to influence them in a direction of either saving money or cutting the subsidies, the money that's leaving our school system and going somewhere else, I make every attempt to do that. I've been very touched by being in the schools. I've spent a lot of time in the schools, and as I go around, I've seen some things. Some of the teachers invited me to come in because there were things I didn't know about, things involving the cafeteria and the work that the cafeteria provides for some of the special education students. And these have had a great impact on me, and I've appreciated the fact that you've shown me these things. These are things that I think all the people on the school committee should take more advantage of, is to get right into the schools and to experience some of these things. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you for presenting what you did. And those of you who have written to me, I think you've probably found that I've answered you back and told you quite honestly what I've been trying to do. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Next, Mr. Mudge.
Thank you. I am one of the people who said we should level fund the taxes this fiscal year. My name is Bill Mudge. I did that. I ran for the school committee because I support education, robust educational system. but it must be implemented in a cost-effective and efficient manner. Many of you people out there know, when I spoke up last week or 2 weeks ago and before that, I am against outsourcing, okay, for several reasons. And I will be submitting tonight Mrs. Blankenship's article about the various issues concerning outsourcing and custodial, services and so forth, and I personally experienced some of those throughout my career. But, this goes even back a little bit further, because what we're doing is this now also. We're pointing. And I would like to say that I would not go before the school committee and say we can live with the current tax revenues that we had last year, unless I felt honestly that we could do that. Now, you may disagree with me, and that's fine. But tonight I'm prepared to show you where we can make cuts. Cuts that will not require anyone from losing their job. Not difficult cuts to make. I submitted a request for much information on the budget that was not given to me. So I'm going to make a few errors in some of my judgments, but I want to share them with you, okay? Because when I look at this magic number, $720,000, what's that, 1.5%? What's 1% of, 10% of 60 million is what, 6 million? 1% of that is 600,000? So what are we talking, 1%? 1%. So what we have heard tonight is, don't blame it on this school committee, okay? Blame it on the town council. They're the bad guys. They're the ones that are doing it for us. Yet it's the superintendent that recommended and the members of this committee to go out and contract out your jobs, basically. Despite the fact that I first wanted to have an analysis done to see if we were properly and adequately staffed, overstaffed. I will not support 3 men doing a 2-man job. And if that comes to my attention, unfortunately, somebody would have to lose their job. You have no room for inefficiencies. Now, with that said, what are we going to save by outsourcing your jobs? Where is the savings? How much are we going to make? The superintendent said at a budget committee meeting this past week that we're not going to have to pay all the benefits. So imagine that. We're not going to have to pay, for some of your pension and some of your health benefits. You see? So we're really on the precipice of an unbelievable socio-economic issue. Whereas the guy on the lower end of the scale is getting it dumped on him. Yet the superintendent, okay, and I would suggest maybe we should contract out the administrative staff, or maybe we should take away the benefits of our administrative staff. Superintendent's salary with benefits is $188,000 a year. Did you know that? And a lot of other people. Now, I'm not singling him out, but I'm making a statement here that the curve's going both ways, and it's being dumped on you. Because people at this board here, we don't want you folks to have any benefits, okay, any pension or health benefits. And shame on them. I'll never support that. I will never support that. If you're doing a good job, you're working hard, I feel, as every American should, that no matter whether you're in the lower end of the scale or the higher end of the scale, that you should be well compensated, at least from a standpoint of your benefits and your health and medical benefits. And I will not support contracting, because there are many other intangible issues that go along with that I personally experienced, and it's been well said in the articles that I will submit that Mrs. Blankenship said today. But I would like to try to focus what the really problem is for you folks. I'm not sure how long you're going to be here, so I want to do that. What we're saying, folks, is we really have a $730,000 or $713,000 reduction from the town council. Well, in fact, ladies and gentlemen, we started this fiscal year with $2.3 million of surplus. In this budget, and I was prepared to, I'm going to pass this out publicly too, so that press about 5 o'clock today. Out of that $2.3 million, we're going to apply $1.1 million and change out of that surplus for this year's budget. As an option, if we applied the full the full council cut, $713,000, that would leave us a net surplus of $431,000 this fiscal year. A net surplus. If we just did nothing but used up our surplus. But just doing nothing isn't satisfactory as far as I'm concerned. And what we haven't done with this committee is really looked into what's going on. For example, ladies and gentlemen, I looked at the school budget, and just general supplies went up $350,000 in its budget estimate since last year. $350,000, and I can't get any explanation as to why we need $350,000 more. And it's $400,000 or so since 2010. What in Lord's name is that going to be? And it's not electricity, it's not fuel, it's not heat. None of those are in that. General supplies. Hardware, $400,000, and I can't get an answer as to what we're spending for $400,000 and what couldn't we do, couldn't achieve if we didn't have this money. Can't get an answer to that, but there's $400,000 there. Ladies and gentlemen, there are some other issues in here that I have come across. For example, in the budget, there's $185,000 that is unaccounted for. It's in a reserve account. That's not on the list. And my list also says that we took revenues off that aren't being applied. We're taking revenues from the building, rentals for, our buildings and everything else that were formerly in the budget. Those are no longer included in the budget. Gate receipts, for football and everything, it basically going back in the budget like it should. And that was $67,000, $37,000. They didn't tell you we're going to get $117,000 from the state this year, an extra $117,000, even though we're probably going to make other cuts for our capital investment program. So that's $117,000 of incoming revenue.
Mr. Mudge?
I'm going to I'm going to complete this for these people out of here. Thank you. I didn't interrupt anybody else.
Please
wrap
it up so Kim can get a chance to say something.
I will finish when I'm damn well done. Okay? I'm sick and tired of being butted in on. Okay? And there's a couple other issues, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? We could increase our revenues by at least $50,000, unfortunately, by having to raise our cost of our lunches. You realize they haven't risen since 2004? I mean, maybe they should go up more, but there's a $50,000 savings possibly right there. Why haven't we discussed those things? What have we done? Okay, as a school committee, really worked hard on this stuff. How about prior year encumbrances? See, we don't spend everything, and there's been a continual flow of money from one year to the other, probably at least $50,000. You're not aware of that. So I see, with the fact that we have these accounts, there's another $519,000 of revenue that we have at our disposal. In addition, I have recalculated the health cost. There should be health and savings costs based on the percentages that I have from the original budget of close to $300,000. Dental went down by 4%, and health care went down from 17% to something like 12%. So those increases are marginally, a huge savings. General supplies, $350,000 being cut, $150,000 for hardware. Transportation, I asked, let's bring in a former transportation director and evaluate if we can save additional funds. I believe we can save $250,000 in transportation cost alone. No, this school committee don't want to do that, but they rather contract out and get other people to do your job. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, claims and settlements, $10,000. Other dues and fees, $15,000. Reduced data processing, $25,000. Huge increase in there. How about canceling the contract on the sewer system out here, the maintenance of this thing, which is costing us $30,000, $40,000 a year. That can be done in-house, yet we're contracting it out. How about professional development? Why don't we take a day off with professional development for a year and suspend that and save $97,000, especially in the fact that there's going to be a lot of turmoil in the next few years. How about freezing the principals and vice principal salaries that total about $100,000? $100,000. Okay? How about consolidation savings we're not realizing because we refuse to consolidate our IT department with the towns that can save us a lot of money and at least $100,000 next year if we go through this. Do you think we've had a robust and an honest discussion at this school committee of these issues? I say no, we haven't. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I have fought a long time about this issue about Jamestown tuition rate. At our last school committee meeting, or the school committee meeting that I did not attend, unfortunately, the school committee sneakily, as far as I'm concerned, and unethically passed the Jamestown budget contract. That contract is costing you $500,000 a year, and I can prove it. This committee would never talk about that. Many opportunities I wanted to bring this up, and I can prove the fact that we can save $500,000 at least on those expenditures. Did you ever see a dialogue on this school committee addressing that? No. But in the dark of night, they came in on April 26th and said, we're going to approve this contract. We realize, and I will ask anybody here, how many members at this table saw the contract before the meeting? Raise your hand. I guess nobody saw the contract. So we have a contract for a new year that nobody saw and everybody voted on that cost us $500,000. Now, is that due diligence on our part? Are we really working for the taxpayers of North Kingstown? Are we doing an honest job, a creditable job to pick this out? I say no, and I say we can live, okay, with a non-increase in tax revenues. There's money here to be spent, and it can be spent wisely. Thank you.
I appreciate the people who have called me over the last couple of weeks and who have sent me emails. I do want to say that we do value our employees. I did vote to increase the budget, and during the time when the town council was considering it, I made sure I made a call to every single town council member to let them know the straits that we were in and to talk to them. I reached all but one, and that was just because we didn't touch each other on the phone. But unfortunately, that's not the hand we were dealt, and so we have to live within the hand that we were dealt. If you take a look at the reductions that the superintendent has proposed, you will see that any of the outsourcing is not proposed for next year. That is not something that is on the budget for next year. It's something that could happen in the year 2013. So that's not something that we're going to be voting on in terms of trying to do. What we have tonight is we have some difficult decisions to make because we have basically $713,000 that has to be cut out of our budget because by law we have to have a balanced budget. We are already dipping into our reserved $1.1 million, and that's our reserves that we have for things in case we have the roof fall in case we have a fire, in case those things that are things that if we have windows broken, all the things that we need to be able to take care of. So we can't dip into the total reserve because we need to have that extra there that if something happens for an emergency. But we are dipping into it a great deal by $1.1 million, and we still have to cut $716,000. I'm sorry for all the choices we're going to have to make here tonight. I'm trying to make choices that would impact students the least. We are welcoming suggestions. We have talked to our food service director about increasing the cost of lunch. It was something that we talked about a number of weeks ago, and that is something that is being explored. We do welcome suggestions, And we will be working with the ESP group to get to where we can hopefully make the best choices for our students that will have the least impact on them.
So there you have it, folks. 7 people with 7 opinions on what happened and why it's happening and how we feel about your predicament as well as ours. I thank you for listening. As we listen to you, we have to move forward. Okay, the next item that we're going to cover is the superintendent's report. Dr. Thornton?
Hi, good evening. For my report, just 2 quick pieces. First, an FYI, we're currently working on what's called our CRP, or Consolidated Resource Plan. That is a yearly process where we process all the federal grant money. We have to apply for the grants every year, and it's done now online electronically. Unfortunately, it's some more bad news in terms of what we're hearing. We heard this early this week. Title II, which pays for some teachers and things like GEMSNet, is losing around $60,000. So we have to absorb that hit. We're absorbing it internally, nothing else in this conversation. We're just not doing some things we're going to be doing. Also, today around 4 o'clock, Rachel Santa informed me special ed is down $150,000. So those are new variables that came out this week. So it is troubling. In terms of the federal government, just to give you a sense of it, in the past couple of years, the federal government has closed out some grants. We used to have something called Title V, Innovative Education. That's now zeroed out as of a couple of years ago. Title IV was called Safe Schools. That's zeroed out. That was zeroed out last year. What we have left is Title I, Title II, Title III, ESL, and special education. So the theme is the federal money is going down. How it hurts us is most school districts, NCAN included, has personnel in the grants in some shape or form. So it does put stress on our system as how we navigate this. Our CRP is due June 1st, Dr. Auger, correct? June 1st. Yep, so we'll be doing that, and our committee will hear about our progress on the June 14th meeting. Aside from the Title II piece, one piece of good news, we are working with a company called eLert, and they're looking at the tech services both on the school side and town side. And 3 items are on tonight's agenda in consent, and I did interact with the eLert person today, figuring if we are talking about these things, I have tech experts who can see if these are wise purchases or not. I just want to share with the committee briefly, I did cover the 3 pieces that are on consent with you. The first piece is called Microsoft licensing. We have to pay every so often to Bill Gates a fee to use Windows in the whole operating system, Word, Excel, etc. It's now an 18-month license, and the consultant did say that is a wise purchase still. Schools, as of now, are not going to open source just yet. They are still paying through that system, so we're having that tonight on the agenda. The second piece is bandwidth. That's the amount of, room we have to do Internet traffic, if you will. And we're, once again, using RINET. RINET won the state bid. We're getting 20 megs more of bandwidth for the same price. So the vendor thought that was a good move also. We're going to 83 from 62, I believe. So that's good. What it means to us is, as we do more things on the Internet, more video streaming with kids and adults, it helps us keep things moving fast. So that's number 2 on consent tonight. And the last piece are routers. Every school has a router. It's a thing that helps the school navigate, if you will, in the whole network. We're actually going to be renting our routers, and if approved tonight. If we rent them, we get reimbursed from the federal government. It's called E-rate. So the vendor thought that was a good idea to rent the routers, and that's also on tonight's consent agenda. So that really concludes the update. If you want, I can go right into the budget, or give something else you want to.
Yes, why don't we move right into the budget?
Excuse me, I have a comment on his remarks, please.
All of these people are here.
Excuse me.
Here.
Point of order.
Excuse me. We're sticking to the agenda. What is your point of order?
Point of order is we changed this for the superintendent's report. Okay? Now I have some questions with regard to the superintendent's report. Thank you.
The superintendent's report is just a report. That's all it is. It's not for question and answer. Thank you, Mr. Mudge.
Oh, it's not?
No, it's not. We're moving right into the school budget, since all of you folks are here, and I know you're concerned about the cuts that we may have to approve this evening. So if the superintendent will please move into the budget.
Sure. In terms of the budget process, you have to know this is not a desirable process in the least. And Mrs. Benson earlier asked the question, if we could live off a certain amount this year, why not next year? I'll give you one quick example. Healthcare and pension alone are $1 million new for our district next year. We're using 1.1 of fund balance to help offset that. Even doing that, we still need it for 713. So it costs more to operate next year than this year. Two big pieces, healthcare and pension, $1 million. I just want to point that out to the folks. We can't operate with the same prices in many respects. As to what I recommend to you, I honestly have to tell you, I know some of you well, some of you not so well. If I had things available to cut, like an alleged $300,000 surplus in supplies, I would take that in a second rather than do what I'm doing tonight. I can tell you it simply doesn't exist. Over numerous occasions, I've talked to some folks about what's called a uniform chart of accounts. The state has changed how we have to report all of our spending. As it's done that, what happens is it looks different year over year from this year to next year. Currently, we do something called Insight. Next year, it's UCOA. So it appears in some lines we have big increases, some lines they're low. And I can talk to I'm blue in the face, but it's just not resonating with some folks. But there is no giant war chest of funds. If there was, I wouldn't be here tonight. I would have done it, and the school committee would have happily taken it. I can tell you what I have tonight are the rock and a hard place things I'm looking at. Nothing is pleasant, but it's what I think I need to do to have the least impact. All these things have an impact. Every one of you made great points tonight, but this is what I'm thinking would make the least impact. So having said that, one last piece, I know also Mr. Mudge mentioned medical. The medical did go down. We had modeled 13% increase in medical. It came in at 10.4, I believe 10.5. That was a $232,000 savings. That's in there. It's all in there, folks. We're not trying to hide anything.
No, it's not.
So if I can finish. Having said that, if I could, I'll take the committee down the list. I have a couple small tweaks, and then I can certainly respond to questions. If I could go down the list. As Mrs. Page said, the ones that say pending, the janitorial outsourced question, the school clerk's piece, those are not part of this conversation. That's just on there to keep you in mind that that's out there. But that's not part of this conversation. The social worker is still something I'm recommending you take. That's a new job that I think we do need. As you recall, we had 2 in the budget. We could knock down to 1. I think we need it. Unfortunately, we just can't do it. The ARC, the ACT Resource Center at the high school, the addition to have more kids be proficient, I'm saying take that. The .2 business teacher at the high school, which I think we need, I'm saying take that. The .7 speech, I would tell the committee, take it, but also tell you in the next breath, Rachel Santa has modeled next fall. We have some more 3-year-olds coming up. They're going to need more speech services. So we can take it now, but I have every expectation we'll be hearing about it next fall if we take it. I'm telling you, take it now because I have to balance the budget. We have DMS .2 reading. I'm having it on the list right now as take. I haven't agreed to you in talking to the principal at DMS. She is modeling her schedule, and she really does see a need for it. But I'm saying right now, if I have to balance it, I'll take the .2. I have a .2 DMS library on there to offset the reading as a possibility. The specialists at Whitford Middle, .8. That's the same as last time, where we talked about lesson enrollment, where I could make a .8 art, a .8 music, etc. Supplies is a new one from last time. We talked about this in budget sub, and you see in small letters, high school, superintendent, and schools. I'm saying from the supply lines, I'm taking 15 out of my line. I've lined $30,000 for supplies. What I do is, last year with K-5 reconfiguration, we had to buy things to go back to K-5. For example, we need more cubbies. If someone needs a cubby or something unbudgeted, they come to my line. That's where we get those things from. So I'm chopping that line in half down to 15. The high school, we're cutting that down. And the school is taking some from the schools for a total of 60 for supplies. I know some folks may want to say, well, let's go further with supplies. And I'll tell you, supplies is kind of an art and a science. We model supplies based on historical spending. And we have to be careful not to cut too close. If we do, then we're going to run out of paper next March and April. So I would caution the committee, we can talk about raising supply cuts, but be cognizant you don't go too high and do what I call a paper cut that feels good now but haunts us next March when we're running red in that line. So I'm thinking 60 is cutting it pretty close if I take 60. Next, early retirement incentive. As you recall, last year the committee authorized us to do this. We offered the folks, the teachers union and the GCB folks, my principals, et cetera, an incentive to retire. As you know, we get what's called breakage. If a Step 10 teacher goes away, hire a Step 2 teacher, we have less cost. And 17 folks took us up on that last year. I believe 10 went last June and 7 more this year, or vice versa. What we're saying now is we're modeling, we think if we offered 5 more opportunity, we could save 125. Now, why 5 and why not 10, you might say? Well, as you know, if we offer the incentive, we have to come up with the money to pay for it, and we have to put it aside and reserve it in fund balance. So we can't just write a check. As you watch the news in the state with our pension system, if we promise something, we must have the money reserved to offset it. In this model, we're being consistent with the last offer. If someone was to retire, the offer is 2 years of single medical. That's around $7,000 a year. The offset of that is the top step teacher of 70-something thousand is replaced by a teacher Step 2 in the $30,000 range. So the breakage, the net breakage is around $25,000 per teacher, per person that goes. So we could go higher than 5 if you wanted to do this. The question would be, I'm not sure how high you want to go, or possibly give me latitude to go, 5, 6, or 7. I just don't know what will happen until we offer it. I know just anecdotally, I know a few people who have some interest. I really can't tell you how many. I would tell you that's 125 that would not cause any harm. The only cautionary tale would be how much fund balance do you want to reserve against it. Right now, if you went for 5 people, we're looking at around $60,000 to reserve against it, which I think we could do. So that's that piece. Tech hardware, on page 1 of your handout, as you read there, I took off $80,000 in hardware. I'm taking 15 more out of hardware, total of 95 out of hardware. High school clerk in the guidance office, I'm recommending you take 1. Sports reduction. I met with Jim Marcello and the high school principal, Tom Kenworthy, last week. Last meeting, the committee asked me to not think about one girl and one boy sport, but more think about could we do an across-the-board cut on all of the sports. We really tried to model it, but in the end, it caused more problems than it really was worth. So I'm back to recommending the most costly boys and girls sport, hockey and gymnastics. Next, the custodian's third shift, I'm recommending reduction of 2. The high school sections, the actual number is 7 sections now, I can tell you, to take. I met with the guidance office and the principal. We modeled. Once the students pick classes, we tumble the schedule and see what they're going to take and see what we can reduce without causing a large impact. I can tell you the things we're taking, the rumor was we're cutting AP Science. Nothing is being cut of, I think, the high rigor level. We're collapsing some sections. For example, we have a chemistry class with maybe 17 and 13, and we're collapsing it and running it more, say, around 24, 25, and we'll probably reschedule 3 or 4 kids, doing things like that. So I'm taking 7 sections in this model. The .5 clerk at DMS for $20,000. The high school, I know this one is, I was asked by the budget subcommittee to also rank my items on the bottom half of the page. You can see libraries near the bottom, but it's, once again, a rock and a hard place. If I have to go somewhere, I don't want to say I value one over the other, but I have to pick something to make the number, and that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a .5 and a .5. Also in the red, you have food service. That's just a reminder to you. I think right now the number is not $150 to the bad, it's $140,000 to the bad right now. But we are still trending negatively. That's not to talk about tonight in terms of cutting, it's just to talk about in terms of keeping your mind on that topic. As you know, with the food service, we'll have to reconcile the loss at the end of the school year. We'll take more fund balance out of reserve and fix that. So picture it this way. Earlier it was said we had around $2 million in fund balance. 1.1 goes towards this budget. We had $900,000 left. We'll use 150 to fix the food problem. Now we're down to 750. We'll use 60 for the early retirement incentive. Now we're down to 690. You can see quickly the fund balance goes down. A couple boilers that break, a couple roof problems, you quickly erode your fund balance. That's why I would caution the committee not to do what some have said. Some have told us to deploy our entire fund balance towards the budget and solve the problem that way. That kicks the can. That's going to haunt us next year if we do that. So I wouldn't recommend we do that. So I think I'm done. I can stop and take questions or comments.
Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the agenda topic of the budget, a couple of quick comments, more than questions. Food services, at our last school committee meeting, I had requested that the administration to do a lunch price survey from surrounding districts, and we have that survey has been given to us by the school administration, so I want to thank them for their work on that. I appreciate that, and I also see along with that survey as a recommendation for the 2011-12 school year to increase some of the prices, which could increase revenue by $71,000. So that's encouraging, and that will put us in the average price range with what surrounding school districts charge for school lunch. Secondly, in our new contract with the Jamestown School District, I know they'll be sharing, one of the changes that was made in that contract is they'll be sharing some of the food service costs with us now. Last, two more items actually. As the superintendent mentioned, the school department, much like our homes, has fixed costs, and those fixed costs increase every year, and the cost that the school district has no control over, just like it cost you more, it cost me more to run our homes this year than it did last year. Pension, health care, fuel for buses, electric heat, those price increases are increases that we see every year. One other item, I don't like to see employees pitted against each other, or departments or schools pitted against each other. That's very divisive. It's not going to solve anything. There was a comment made earlier about principals and vice principals taking a pay freeze. They have. Some have taken a pay freeze for 1 year. Some of them are on their second consecutive year of pay freeze, and we've also increased their health care co-share payment, which is at the highest in the state right now for school department employees. So many of these things have been bandied about or have already been discussed and already acted on. Lastly, I'll make a motion at this time. I know there's certainly more discussion to be had, but I just want to get this process moving along. If you look at the sheet that the superintendent has given to us with the recommended reductions, if you have that in front of you, I'm going to work right off of that sheet. You'll see third one down from the top. My motion will be to approve the following budget reduction recommendations from the superintendent. The ARC, the .2 business high school, those two are new positions. The supplies, $60,000. The early retirement incentive, technology hardware, the sports reduction, the 2 third-shift custodian positions, the high school sections, and I'm actually going to add something as well. Supervisor of maintenance position, which is roughly $110,000 of salary and benefits. I proposed this a couple of years ago. There's 2 tiers of management there, and I believe that with some reorganization and internal consolidation, this position could be eliminated. Not desirable, but again, none of these are desirable, and I choose to try to focus as much attention and funding as we can into education. So at that time, that's the motion that I'll offer.
So, just to clarify, you're saying that on the list, the 27066 for ARC, the .2 business, the $60,000 for supplies, the $125,000 for early retirement, the $15,000 for technology hardware, sports reduction for $30,000, the 2 custodians at $80,000, the 7 sections for high school, and the supervisor of maintenance, cutting that position in total. Do you have a total value of that?
I don't have a total value. I'll defer to our business director for the math on that. I know it'll probably take up a minute, but...
Yes, Dr. Thornton.
Just a few fast remarks on that. Well, one question and one remark. For the early retirement incentive, if that was to be approved, I guess also I'm looking for latitude from the committee if I was to get a sixth, a seventh, and eighth person, what is the sense of, how that could play out? That certainly benefit the district, but also would be reserving more funds against that. I'd like to have that conversation if we could. And second, just a quick remark about the maintenance supervisor. I do understand the intent behind it. I wouldn't be recommending it at this time. I would think that would be premature. Thank you.
Could we have that discussion on the sixth, fifth step, the sixth step, when you let us know what particular classes these people would be retiring from?
What I'm asking is, if we open the door on Thursday for this, and I get 7 people that come to the door and want to do this, and we only had a hard 5, I want to talk about having some latitude possibly to go to the 6th or 7th person if I get more folks that want to do it. It would save us more money, but reserve more fund balance. That's all.
Yeah, okay. I need a second on this motion so that we can get into discussion. Is there a second on the motion?
I'll give the second for purposes of discussion.
Okay, so the
Would you
motion has been
repeat
made and
that
been
so that the
seconded by
audience can hear you? I didn't hear you. Did we get a second?
Yes. Mrs. Page seconded the motion.
She did second the motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now, for discussion on the motion.
May I, point of order, may I amend the motion, please?
Okay.
I'd like to amend the motion, take line item votes on each item.
I second it. Is that sign language? Is that sign language?
Vote on the amendment.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? Amended motion?
Could I speak to that?
Sure.
Okay, as far as the amendment goes, I had questions on the way down, and by doing them all together, I'm not feeling like I can ask the questions, and then there was another one added in at the same time, which I'm not ready to vote on. So I would be in favor of taking it one by one. That way we can look at it, ask our questions, and then vote. I second the motion. I thought it was.
Okay.
Motion.
Would the clerk please call roll call vote on the amendment to the motion?
Melvoy Benson. On the amendment to the motion to take each.
Yes, I'm second the motion, so I'm for that.
Larry Cerisi.
Wouldn't second it if I wasn't.
I'm sorry?
No.
William Mudge.
Yes?
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Joe Thompson.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
No.
Motion passes 4-2.
Okay.
Becomes line items.
Okay, so I guess we're going to take it
One
line
at a
item.
time.
We'll start with number 1, the social worker. Is there a motion on?
That's not on his motion.
What is it?
Yeah.
He just wants to work off of the motion?
At this time, I'll make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to remove the ARC position for $27,066 from the budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Would you explain what the ARC is again and the 27,000 and what we can't do, what won't be able to be done if we make this a cut?
I'll go to Dr. Auger for that detailed answer. Dr. Auger?
The ARC is a program that we put together starting this year. It is staffed by a few staff members of the high school, and it's an after-school program that does a number of things, particularly assists students who are behind in their work, and gives them a place to go to work on their anchor assignments. If they're behind in those, that's a graduation requirement. If they fall behind in that requirement, they need a place where we can make it mandatory for them to go to make up that work. It is also a place that a lot of students utilize for additional support, tutoring, that sort of thing, after school.
So this is really a hands-on type of thing these kids need.
Absolutely.
It's a classroom function. supporting these?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sure we wouldn't have it in there if
No
we didn't
grant
feel they
money,
needed
no
it.
grant money or anything for this? This is strictly...
This is not grant money, no.
Okay, thank you.
Sir.
Dr. Ajay, since this says new, how does this interrelate with the existing after-school programs, which are all through the schools?
But we have some of this functioning right now. This would be an expansion of that, to go even larger with the program. Right now, we have a few staff, and we have a lot of students who have a need.
Would this be in one school or several, or?
This is at the high school.
Just the high school, okay.
Just a moment. Dr. Thornton wanted to explain something.
Just one piece to add quickly for the ARC. I think
Dr. Thornton,
when
we
we
can't
talk,
hear you all on this end.
I think when we talked about annual yearly progress in state testing, the question was asked a few meetings ago, how can we help improve the kids' scores at the high school? The ARC is part of that conversation, just to clarify.
Yes, Mrs. Benson.
I would like to say that the ARC program is very, very important because students need help. And one of the things that we're going by, we have these tests.
Go ahead, Mrs. Benson.
Okay, when you finish, you're the chairman.
No, you
because I
go
want
ahead.
you to hear.
You go right ahead, Mrs. Benson.
Well, I'll save it. That's okay, because you're the chairman, and I was trying to impress you.
Didn't do a very good job.
No, conversation going on, so I'll save it with the vote.
Thank you.
Because I was lobbying for it.
Is there any other discussion on the motion? Mrs. Page?
Just a quick reminder that the ARC program would stay, it's just it wouldn't be expanded. So if we vote for this, it means we'll still have an ARC program, we just won't expand it.
Correct.
Thank you. Mrs. Benson again, yes.
I have a question. Dr. Zahn can answer this. Is there a need for expansion? Are we experiencing more children who need this program?
I believe there is a need for an expansion. If you recall last meeting, we talked about...
But slow down a little bit.
If you recall last meeting, we talked about special education and how they were improving, but I think Mr. Thompson asked, what more can we do to help those kids improve? To help more kids improve, I think a lot of students and adults need more time.
Yes.
Time is the variable.
I agree
This
with you.
gives kids more time. I would certainly recommend this is a high-value program, but once again, we're at a zero. We don't have the luxury of adding to this right now.
Well, in education, our primary purpose, that's what the luxury is for. If the children need help, let's give it to them. That's the primary purpose of education.
Can we take a roll call vote?
Mr. Chairman, a comment, please.
You've already spoken, Mr. Mudge.
Oh, excuse me?
We're going to stay here all night because you want to keep on talking. Mr. Mudge, go ahead. Okay, Mrs. Page.
No,
you have
I'm
something
going
to
to make my statement. I just want to hold my tongue for a second before I say something that I don't want to. Dr. Auger, is this in addition to a current program? So make sure I understand.
Yes, yes,
So,
it is.
and so we're going to be able to serve more kids, and obviously, and
Serve more kids and do so differently. We are looking at a program right now that, is in its first year. We're learning a lot. We're learning a lot about our capability and how much we can do with this right now. And I think we need to expand it, in thoughtful ways. It may not be just a direct expansion of everything that we have now, but I feel that we need these resources to help in a number of areas. And this can only help us.
what particular students are you attempting to help? Is it a child that...
Well, for instance, one of the issues right now that we have at the high school is that students have mandatory anchor assignments that they need to complete for their electronic portfolio. It's a graduation requirement. Now, we're doing some work to look at that whole program, but with that issue involved, if students don't have their anchor assignments done on time, we need some kind of a recourse to work with them to make sure that they get this work done so that they can graduate. This is one tool that we have. There are a number of things that we can do. This is an important tool. If we can expand on that, we can really help them. That's one area. Another area is with, after-school tutoring for just students in general. Now, a lot of students will go to their teachers after school. They've been tremendous at helping students after school. This is an extra place that they can go to receive additional help if they should need it. And a lot of students are taking advantage of it. And what we're finding is that the small staff that we have right now is getting pretty overwhelmed.
Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could you please call the question?
Okay. Would the clerk please call the roll on the budget item for the ARC 27,066?
Right.
Melvoin Benson.
Mr. Chair, would you mind explaining, is this to remove or retain?
Remove.
Are you voting no?
No. It's much needed.
Larry Cerisi.
Yes.
William Mudge.
No.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Joe Thompson.
No.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Motion fails 3-3.
So we'll retain the funding then.
Mrs. Page?
Okay, I'm a little frustrated because this is a new program that we're merely not, that we can't afford to add, basically. And if we're going to go, we have to cut programs here. We are $716,000 that we're not budgeting. And we have to cut new programs. We can't add. We can't add new people. We can't add new programs. And if all we're going to do is sit here and knock them down, because what happens is by parliamentary procedure, we can't bring it up again. And so now we can't bring it up again. So now the problem will be is we'll sit here all night and we won't cut anything and we will get nothing done. And I don't want to do that. It's the sort of thing of, it's frustrating being here and having to make these cuts. It is not fun. It is not something I enjoy. It is not something I want to do. But we have to make the tough choices here, folks. And so we've had 2-hour meetings in our budget meetings twice. We've gone through all of these. Mr. Mudge, you were there. Mr. Thompson, you were there. And at that time, we seemed to have kind of some sort of a
And you personally.
Yes, Mel, you were there.
That's
You've
correct.
been at most of the meetings. The only one you missed, and I have missed one too. But what my point is that we've gone through these and we've had plenty of time for at least 4 of us, only 3 at a time, to be going through these. That if we don't get someplace, we're going to have to make even tougher cuts. These are the lesser of all the evils. These are the easier cuts than the next ones that are coming down the lane, folks. So we have to do this stuff before we get to the really difficult ones. So, I am looking at it at 9:10, and it's a sort of thing of, or 9:05, and, it's a sort of thing of how long are we going to sit here? Because if we're going to sit here and not vote to cut anything, it's not going to get easier.
Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mrs. Page. Excellent comments. It's disingenuous and cowardly, in plain English, that 2 people that went in front of the town council and lobbied for this budget to get cut to 0 can now sit here and vote no on every cut that's proposed, in plain English. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves, okay? One of you went in front of the town council and asked for a $6 million cut. Now you're abstaining from cuts tonight and you're voting no on cuts tonight, but you have other pie-in-the-sky cut proposals that you're going to make? This is shameful. This is shameful. We have been through this budget since January.
You haven't done a
You've had
thing
these
since
budget,
January.
you've had these
Give me a
budget, you've
break.
had these
You haven't done a
you've
thing
had
since
these budget
January.
discussions since
Give me a
January.
break.
You've had, these positions have been in front of you for a month now. No, I'm not all set. You asked for a 0 budget, you got what you asked for. Don't leave, folks. Stay here and see what you voted for. This is what you put in office. You deserve what you voted for. I'll offer another motion.
Excuse me, we haven't finished being called on here.
No,
Until you get to the next motion.
Point 2 business, high school, another new position. I'll offer to reduce that.
Could I please speak?
We haven't had a
I've been
motion on the
attacked.
table.
You've had all your chance to
Motion on
say
the table.
all your
You have an
stuff.
opportunity to say something in a minute. We have a motion on the table. Is there a second to cut the point 2 business for $12,500?
Yes, second.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, could I have a roll call vote on the .2 Business High School, $12,500, please?
Larry Cerisi.
Yes.
William Mudge. Page.
Time out. I said no. I have insufficient budget information to make that decision, and I will not cut programs and teachers.
Thank you.
Yeah, you had enough information, ask for a $2 million cut, but you can't cut $12,000 from the budget. Give us a break.
Cerisi, you don't even know what's in the budget. What are you talking about?
Please continue with the roll call vote.
Joe Thompson.
Now you got me confused here.
Are you cutting .2 business
Yes,
teacher
cut.
at the
Yes.
high school? Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Melvoy Benson.
Question for the superintendent. You have new position there. It's a new position?
Yes.
Is it very important to because we didn't finish getting the discussion done on the ARC? Because I think the ARC carries right into our test scores. And the way Mr. O'Jay did it, when I get a chance to speak, I have to say it all at once. So I know I'm mixing potatoes with oranges.
It was voted on.
It's already been voted on, but I didn't get to speak to it, and I just want to express my concern, and I voted for it. And this is the new position?
I think we need to cut it.
Do we have the students to fill it?
We can manage at the high school without it.
Also, it was just one of those things put in the budget for cosmetics.
I'm recommending we cut the .2.
You didn't answer my question.
He made the recommendation to cut
Point
to
of order.
.2.
Point of order.
Yes, Mr. Mudge.
The vote's been taken on the issue. We didn't have the vote, so let's move on to the next item.
There's no vote on this item yet. We're in the process of a roll call vote.
We're voting.
Excuse me, Mr. Mudge.
Point of order, sir. We were just talking about the ARC. Now, what are we talking about, the ARC, or what are we talking about?
I brought in about the ARC, Mr.
It's a roll call vote. Could we just have a yes or
But we are voting
no?
on the business high school.
Just a yes or no, if you're going to vote it or not. That's what the question is right now.
On what item?
.2 business teacher at the high school. Mrs. Benson?
I got my answer partly from the superintendent, so he said he recommended, so I'm sure we'll have an outstanding education career without this for our students.
Is that a yes?
Yes, cut it.
Motion passes 5-1.
Mr. Cerisi.
Continuing on with the motion that's on the floor. The motion that was on the floor was for me to go through each item individually, and that's what I'm going to continue on with. Supplies, $60,000. I'll make a motion to approve that recommendation.
Is there a second to cut?
I'd like to amend the motion.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Mudge.
I'd like to amend the motion to cut $350,000 from supplies.
Is there a second?
And, may I finish, please? May I finish, please?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay? In fiscal year 10, we spent $2.2 million on supplies. The current budget today is $2.64 million, or $442,000 greater than it was 2 years ago. How can that budget increase so significantly? We know out of the $2.6 million total budget, $560,000 has been fully budgeted for all classroom supplies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Number one. Number two, with respect to this, I have seen no justification for these supplies. I have no idea if we have reoccurring supplies, where we're going to spend this money, and the school the administration is obligated to tell us if they have any single expenditure over $5,000 and or combined expenditures over $5,000. So, for example, in supplies, are we buying a $50,000 computer? I have no idea. No one has told us that. And I'll be damned if I'm going to be laying people off when I can't be given an answer on how we're spending $350,000.
Thank you, Mr. Mudge. Is there a second on the motion to amend? Hearing none, it's defeated. Okay. Now, the main motion on the floor is to vote up or down on the supplies cut for $60,000. A roll call vote, please.
Excuse me, could I
William
speak?
Mudge.
Point of order.
Roll call.
Point of order.
What's the
roll call vote?
What is the point of order, Mrs.
The
Benson?
point of order is, let's calm down. People are raising their hand, and you're being very authoritative.
Thank you.
You see those you want to see, and those you don't want to see, you don't see it.
We're working
This
on a
is-
motion that has already been approved. We're going down the list.
And this gentleman had his hand up relating to the motion on supplies. That's what I'm speaking to.
I see, and he can't speak for himself. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
You didn't call on him.
We had a budget subcommittee meeting on the 17th, and at that time, the superintendent's recommendation was to cut supplies $55,000. Mr. Mudge, at the same meeting, made the pitch that he's just made here tonight, that supplies could be cut by $350,000. We sort of asked the superintendent if he would come back and raise his figure so that we could get more money from the supplies rather than take it from the other programs that you've all been speaking to tonight. When he came back with tonight's figure, he had gone up from $55,000 to $60,000. I don't think that that was going up enough, and yet I'm fearful to go all the way to $350,000 because I do agree with things the superintendent has said, that you get to the end of the year, you'll be in trouble. I was hoping, but everyone else made a motion, so I couldn't get to it. I was hoping to offer some kind of compromise figure in between $60,000 and $350,000. But just to finish this point off, and you can do whatever you want, but this is the kind of thing that I've been trying to tell you all along, is that when the superintendent gives you a sheet and says, this is all you can do, you really have your hands tied. And I think there are lots of places in this $60 million budget that we can find savings, and I think Mr. Mudge should be commended for hanging in there with all of the things that have been directed at him. So however this thing comes out, I think if this group only votes to cut $60,000 from supplies, you have really not done a good job with managing your funds for this coming fiscal year. I think you can get a lot more than $60,000. I don't know what it might be, but I was going to suggest $200,000. I think we could live with a $200,000 figure. I just haven't been able to get up to the front so I can make that motion. I've been trying for the last 10 or 15 minutes.
Yes, Mrs. Page.
Well, what can be done is we can vote now on the $60,000 cut, and then after that, then you can make a motion to make it for more. But right now,
If the $60,000 fails?
right now, well, why should the $60,000 fail? You can always cut for more. You approve the $60,000, and then you can cut more.
I'm not sure if I
But-
trust that. I'm not sure if I trust that.
Well,
I've
you know,
heard that kind of thing
let's
before.
think about this. If you're going to cut more, 60,000 is going to be in there. So you can at least cut 60,000, and that gets passed. And then if you want to cut more, you make the motion. But if you don't pass the 60,000 motion, you don't even get that done. You see how this works? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've been there
Mr. Chairman?
before.
I'd like to
Mr. Chairman?
finish taking the vote. Mr. Mudge, you've
Chairman,
spoken at
comment,
length on this
please.
subject. Could you please take the vote on...
Please, comment please on this discussion.
Billy,
Comment
you've
on-
occupied enough of this meeting.
Excuse me.
You've said twice about what you feel about...
I am adding value to this discussion, sir.
Yeah, okay.
And
well,
shame on
we'll
you.
do it in your
okay?
subcommittee meeting. Thank you very much.
Why can't I, as a school committee member, get a list of supplies that in accordance with, okay, our UCAR regulations that tell me what's being procured? What is so secret about this thing?
I am sure
Who's
there's
justifying the
nothing secret
three?
about it.
Then why can't we get an understanding of why we're raising $350,000? Why can't I get that, sir?
Mrs. Page.
I believe that question was asked at our budget subcommittee, and there was some answer to that.
And the answer was $275,000.
there was an answer given by Mr. Draper, and then there was also an invitation extended that you could come in and discuss this one-on-one, and he'd go much more in depth.
Excuse me, what's the discussion? Let's just put it out there. He said 275 at the meeting, now it's only up 10,000. He said 275. I don't want to discuss this behind closed doors. I want it public. I want this public to know how this money is being spent.
There are some things, it's not a matter of it being behind closed doors if you go in to talk to someone. It's a matter that not all of us feel the need to go into such great detail as you do.
Well, why can't I get a list of the $350,000?
And Mr. Draper explained at the meeting as to where some of the cuts were, and you can easily go in and you can question him further and take a lot of the time that you would like to spend on this.
I only want is a list. Why can't I get a list?
I do not
I requested it in writing, and the superintendent refused to give it to me.
I do not feel as if I need to go in and listen to this entire meeting to every time we spend over $5,000. And it becomes a little bit extraneous to think that we would sit here and look at every single time we spend over $5,000.
We can't find out what $350,000 is being spent. And you want to lay people off.
At a time, please.
And you have been invited to go ahead and do that. If you choose not to do it, I think it's a little bit disingenuous to then criticize at the table because you have been given the opportunity and you have been given the offer. It's that you have chosen not to do that. But to take up all 7 of our time to then say that we have to do that here at the table is something that is just completely unwieldy.
Mrs. Page, why wouldn't you just support a motion that he provides us a list? I make a motion that we get a list of expenditures for all its supplies, especially the $350,000 increase.
The motion on the floor right now that has to be voted on.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Please take the roll call vote.
Kimberly Page.
Attorney,
Yes.
could we hear your ruling?
Thompson.
Read the motion.
60,000.
There's already a motion on the floor, so Mr. Mudge can't make a new motion
That's
until you
correct.
vote on the motion that's on the floor.
That's correct. We couldn't hear you down
Sorry,
this way.
you know what, we're having trouble with this microphone tonight, I apologize.
It's like 2 meetings.
Joe Thompson.
On the $60,000 item, Joe, yes to
Supplies
cut or
for
not?
60.
Yes.
Yes to cut.
Yes
Richard
to
Welsh.
Cut, yes.
Melvoy Benson.
Cut it.
Larry Cerisi.
Take the superintendent's recommendation. He
William
runs
Mudge.
the day-to-day.
As a starter, yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
I'd like to make a motion, Chair.
Make a motion?
Mr. Cerisi.
I'm continuing on with the motion which was made and passed, which was required me to go down each item individually. So that's what I'm going to continue to do.
I'd like to make a motion regarding the last
100.
item, sir.
All right.
100 is the next item is early retirement incentive for $125,000. I make a motion to approve that recommendation.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to cut $125,000 by having 5 FTEs go into early retirement? Hearing none, a roll call vote,
Wait a
please.
minute, you didn't.
Comment,
I
please.
want to speak to that
Mrs.
one.
Benson?
I don't, we've been talking so much, and here it said recommended action now. With the state of our pension, I really don't feel that we should make a motion to give any incentive for people to get in the pension. Is something wrong with that, Mr. Cerisi? The legislature haven't even decided, and we're in debt. I think they say that each citizen, if we had to pay for the pension liability, would be $30,000. And for us to give someone an incentive who puts the most maximum amount of pension to take on someone who gives the minimum amount, I don't think that's quite business thinking on our part.
Thank you, Mrs. Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Chairman.
Can somebody, Ned, could you please explain to me, I thought I was cutting $125,000. Am I cutting $125,000 if I vote yes, or am I adding $125,000? It says incentives, so it sounds like we're...
Cutting 125.
What effect is this going to have on 5 FTEs? What are we doing here?
In essence, you're adding to the breakage number. What happens is when a higher paid employee leaves,
Yes?
a lower paid employee comes in behind them, that difference in salary and benefits is what we save.
But what is the incentive part of this? This is what I don't
The
get.
incentive would be our cost. We would have to provide health care. I believe the offer is 2 years of health care.
For a single.
And for a single plan, and a cash incentive as well.
So then we're adding $125,000 to our
No,
to
the
our
net
budget.
breakage on it would be 125 in year one, Joe. It continues every year thereafter. But we're working in this budget, so if 5 people that had 15 or more years in, if they took up that, the net savings is about $125,000 in the first year.
All right.
Okay? All right. Mr. Mudge.
Superintendent Thornton, do you have those people lined up now, do you think?
No, I don't have everyone lined up. I have some people that have talked to me that I think they may act. Until we were to do this, we wouldn't know. Last time we did this, we also had conversations, and we had a sense that some folks might take us up. At that point, 17 did. So I can tell you right now, I've had a handful of conversations, Mr. Mudge, but I don't have 5 in my hand.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this could vary, then. That was my point. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
William Mudge.
Yes.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Joe Thompson.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Mel Boyd Benson.
No.
Larry Cerisi.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1.
Thank you. Mr. Cerisi.
Motion to approve the $15,000 reduction to the budget for technology hardware.
Second.
Any discussion on the technology cut? Mr. Thompson.
Again, at the same meeting of May 17th, the superintendent offered a figure of $15,000. Mr. Mudge or Mr. August, I'm not sure which, was talking in the range of $100,000. So here again, we're being asked to help save $15,000 from the budget when it seems from the conversation that we had in the budget meeting of 5/17 that figure could have gone up to $100,000.
Mr. Thompson, earlier this evening,
Yep.
the superintendent said the $15,000 is on top of what he's already cut, which would bring it to a total of $95,000. Is that correct, Dr. Thornton?
That's correct.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Thompson?
Thank you.
Roll call vote, please.
Time out, I'm still here, I think.
Yes, Mr. Mudge.
You have in your budget line item 57309, technology-related hardware, $149,000. You're proposing to reduce that now down by $95,000. Is that correct? Technology hardware? Your line item is $150,000. Also, you have a line item of $168,000 for hardware and $214,000 for software. You have a total of $445,000 of essentially hardware, okay? Could you explain to me why we need $445,000 and why we can't cut $150,000 from that total?
Dr. Thornton?
Well, just for starters, as you know, over the past couple of years, we have replaced computers at the elementary school and the middle school. If you can think back, we had some very antiquated old Macs from around 2001, the kind of the big bulbous Macs, if you will. Those are now gone. We have thin clients, all the elementaries and the middle schools. The high school is the last school that we have to really look at. We have some machines in the high school that have were here when the school opened, if you will. I know sometimes folks might say we can make do, and I do believe that to an extent, but when machines are 8, 9, and 10 years old, it's problematic. Here's a quick example. As you know, Bill Gates keeps changing. We have Millennium, we have Vista, XP, all 7's a new thing, a new operating system called 7. Anyone has that at home? And as you may sometimes see, when someone sends you a document, sometimes you can't open it because you have the wrong operating system or the wrong setup. We run the risk now, if we don't start replacing the high school machines, we'll not be able to run 7. And 7 is now coming upon us. We've held off running 7. That being said, we're looking at buying machines that are refurbished and also buying thin clients. Also, the last piece I would tell you is we've already started to talk with eLert, the tech consultant. One thing I think he'll tell you is our backbone is very old. That means all of our background stuff, our switches, our routers, our servers, he's going to tell us we must invest in the backbone or it's going to fail. So I welcome the report, quite frankly, from eLert. It'll back up what we're doing, so I think we need to budget that money to keep our backbone robust.
Don, may I ask a question, please? So, you submitted a budget back in January that called for $445,000 of hardware and so forth and so on, and we hadn't even put out the IT study. What were we ordering back in January when you presented the budget? And what are we buying for this money today, specifically?
Excuse me, there's a point of order?
Point of order. And, Mr. Chairman, this discussion, the motion is to cut this amount from the budget. This discussion is way off base from the motion that is on the table, which is to cut this amount from the budget. You are now delving into a budget discussion that we had back in January when the superintendent originally proposed his budget to the committee. This is to cut, not to talk about what was proposed originally, and I would ask that you limit the discussion to the motion on the table in accordance with Robert's rules.
Okay, my point of order, I would request again for the...
I agree with the point of order.
The equipment is going to be cut.
We'll have a roll call.
Oh, you guys are beautiful.
Joe Thompson.
Read that motion again. Where are we?
This is to cut the technology for
Yes.
the team. Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Melvoy Benson.
Yes, cut it.
Larry Cerisi.
Yes.
But give us a chance
William
to
Mudge.
express ourselves.
Yes, and I'm going to recommend another $105,000.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Mr. Cerisi.
Mr. Chairman, continuing on, I'll offer a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation of a sports reduction by $30,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes. I think it's premature to cut any sports, whether it's hockey, gymnastics, or anything else. There is sufficient funds within this budget to fund our staff for next year and to fund these programs. And I think it's irresponsible at this time to reduce the athletic budget, especially given the fact that we're sitting on a huge budget surplus. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mudge. Mrs. Benson?
In cutting this from sports, you know, we have a federal government requirement that we have to go along with. The sports should be equal for boys and girls.
Title IX.
Title IX, thank you. I knew you had the answer. You're brilliant. Anyway, just to arbitrarily cut this, what sport would they be cutting?
Hockey and gymnastics.
Ooh.
That changed.
It's right there in front of you.
Yes, it's in very small letters.
I'm sorry, I didn't print it.
Did you see it now?
I don't see it.
It's right here.
Dr. Thornton?
Sure, just to take you back.
Hockey and gymnastics.
If you
Now,
think back,
there you go.
if you think back around a month ago, we had originally hockey gymnastics. Last meeting, the committee, as you recall, asked to see if I could spread the cut across all the sports.
That's
To that
correct.
end, I met with Dr. Ken Worthy and Jim Marcello to model that, and at the end, we just agreed it was too problematic to model that. I think I mentioned it earlier tonight. So at the end of the day, not that it's desirable, but it seemed to us more pragmatic to go back to one girl, one boy. I know it's often asked, how do you arrive at these sports? Look at a dollar value in terms of student use, if you will. These are the two costliest sports that we're running right now, one girls, one boys.
Thank you.
Question?
Mr. Thompson?
This gets back to something that I was going to speak to tonight. I'm probably not going to be able to, but this is what happens when we get a packet from the administration and do our studying, do our homework, and then at the last minute, they come in and throw something on the table. Now, what was agreed to prior to tonight's meeting was that we were going to talk about cutting a 6% sports reduction, total $30,000. The sports athletic director was going to make those cuts, which he knows where they are, and he was going to do it himself. Now what they've done is they brought back on the table a brand-new sheet of paper that we weren't handed that we didn't get the study, and that they have changed what they had originally. And on this sheet, in very small print, it says hockey and gymnastics. We already talked to them in the meeting before about not cutting hockey and gymnastics. Here it shows up back on the table just as we're ready to vote. This happened to us with the Jamestown contract, and here they go again. So I would respectfully request that you, well, I don't know what to say. If you're voting to eliminate 2 sports, I'm not going to vote for it. I think we can take $30,000 from the sports program, but I do not want to see hockey and gymnastics being cut from this school.
You take it from supplies.
Okay. Mrs. Page.
Well, I agree. I don't want to see hockey or gymnastics cut. I would rather this be just a straight $30,000 from sports. And I say that because, and feeling the pain, because I don't really want to go there, but if I'm going to make cuts on all these things, I know that it needs to come out of the sports budget just as well. What I would say is that I know that it can be frustrating getting these things at the table, but we do have kind of this timeline in which we have to get the get the agenda ready about a week to 2 weeks ahead of time, because it had to be advertised last Thursday for this Tuesday's meeting. So you're putting something together practically 2 weeks ahead of time. True, then we get the agenda out then on Thursday electronically, but things can change between then. And so the superintendent did say at the beginning when he was going down and describing all these, he did say that this is what was on here. So it's not like it was written in small print and he didn't mention it. He mentioned it when he was going through. It is frustrating, but it is something that we have to be able to work with if we're in here at the table, that we will get last-minute changes and we have to be able to be flexible.
Dr. Thornton.
Sure. Just to add to that, to the extent possible, I would think the committee would want real-time information. If you would like me not to give you updated information, I can just keep it as it is and wait a whole other meeting till June 14th and then come back with the real information. I would think tonight at your places you would want the real-time information, so I did that. Having said that, I am understanding that the committee may not want to go hockey, gymnastics, and that's understandable. You could still make a cut across the board for 30 and just have us do it. I would tell you I'll get it done, but it's not I think our most optimum thing to do, but we'll get it done. So if you don't want to go hockey, gymnastics, make the cut for 30 across the board.
Could we do that? Is there
in the motion?
I make a motion, amended motion, that we cut 6%, $30,000 from the sports program and let the athletic director make that decision and not cut the 2 specific programs that were added on at the last minute.
Is there a second on the amendment?
Second. I second that.
Any discussion on the amendment?
Yes, please.
Yes, Mr. Mudge.
I think the comment came back, I could be wrong, that the athletic department and the coaching staff or whatever felt that they had made their best recommendation. I think that's what they came back and said. And it was to cut 2 sports. So that's what my basis of my discussion is. With that said, I don't mind sending a request for a cut back to the administration and have them come back with a recommendation. It is our responsibility to approve the cuts. I'm not going to stick it on the athletic director's nose or the superintendent's nose or anybody else. It is our decision, not theirs. I appreciate and want their recommendation, but I'm not going to sit here and say, you got to suck it up and make it yourself. So I'm going to vote no, only because of the way the issue has been put up for vote. Now, if you want to go back and come back with a recommendation, fine. Otherwise, no mas.
Dr. Thornton.
Just to clarify, our homework was to go away from hockey and gymnastics, meet with the AD, the principal, brainstorm what to do. Jim Marcello, as you know, is very detail-oriented. He truly went through this painstakingly. At the end of the day, he met me last week with the principal, and at the end of the day, he felt it was just too problematic, thus back to here. So you're asking us what his best thinking is. This is his best thinking right now.
I want to get rid of
Fine, then that's what I interpreted.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry.
On the amendment?
Wait a minute, just a second. Mrs. Benson?
I just had a thought as to why hockey and gymnastic was. Do we have a boys' gymnastic team?
No, girls.
Okay. Do we have a girls' hockey team?
No.
So.
One of each.
Just one of each. So we're operating a little bit out of the rim as it come to related to your Title IX that you instructed me
No,
for.
we're doing one of each, one girl, one boy.
And they're consistent with it.
Okay.
Explain what you mean by one of each. I know-
Hockey is boys and gymnastics is girls.
Okay, but we don't have a boys' gymnastic team.
Right, and we don't have a girls' hockey team.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. A roll call vote on the amendment.
On the amendment.
And the amendment is
Did you
for
mind reading it?
$30,000 sports reduction without any mention of hockey or gymnastics.
Melvoin Benson.
You want to cut?
Yes.
Thank you.
Larry Cerisi.
Get it out of my mouth.
William Mudge.
No.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Joe Thompson.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
Yes,
Motion passes 5-1.
thank you. Mr. Cerisi?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute.
The main, you have to vote on.
We have to vote on the main motion since it was cut?
Okay, could you read the main motion?
So,
The main motion is to just cut 30,000 from the budget. You've got to vote again on that.
oh, okay. All right, so we're voting
Hockey and
again, so the
gymnastics.
main motion is now to cut the $30,000. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Roll call vote on the main motion, please.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Linda Ovens, she's not
Yeah.
here. Melvoin Benson.
Yes.
Larry Cerisi.
Yes.
William Mudge.
No, we have sufficient funding to fund those sports.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Joe Thompson.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1.
Thank you. Mr. Cerisi?
Motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation of an $80,000 reduction to the budget for 2 third-shift high school custodians.
A second, please?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
Yes.
Mrs. Benson?
How many janitors do we have on the third shift now? I'm looking for information before I make a vote.
Mr. Draper, could you respond to that, please?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Okay, how many custodians do we have on the third shift now?
At the high school.
At the high school, that's what it says.
4.
You have 4? And what does $80,000 cover the salary for how many?
Salary and benefits for 2 individuals.
So you got 4 people now doing a job that we could have been doing with 2. Is that what you're saying?
No, that does not imply services won't be reduced.
Oh, imagine that.
Oh, well, cleanliness is next to godliness. We can't have dirty schools. So what you're saying, cut these people, because if they're needed now, they're still needed. And as the lady pointed out, look at these floors. So you're saying now, cut 2 from that group. Am I correct? I didn't go to school of nod heads. You have to speak up.
I said yes.
Okay, I didn't hear you.
Mr. Mudge?
Oh, yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we decided to unfortunately go out for an RFP for custodial staff, I was against that on the fact that the contract that went out was very inappropriate. It was a poor contract, which I mentioned in the last meeting. And it wasn't a specification contract. What I pointed out was that what we should be doing is first doing a study to see if we are staffed efficiently and smartly, and our staff has the right equipment. Okay?
But I still got reason.
We didn't do that. So we don't really have a baseline of what our staffing is. But I'm going to assume for this discussion that we are efficient. We are doing a good job, and we have the proper equipment so our staff can be efficient. So with that, how can we possibly cut a position, as Mrs. Benson said, if it's truly a requirement? And it's, what'd you say?
It's two
Cleanliness is the...
Cleanliness is next to godliness.
Well, I got to agree with that. So how can we possibly do that? What's our rationale? What are we doing? Golly gee. No.
Thank you, Mr. Mudge. Roll call vote, please.
Mel Boyd Benson.
No cut in
Larry
custodian.
Cirici.
Yes.
William Mudge.
No.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Joe Thompson.
No.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Motion fails 3-3.
Mr. Cerisi.
Continuing on with the list.
Point of order, Mr.
What is
Chair.
the point of order, Mrs. Benson?
My point of order is that it was a tie vote. So could the
Didn't pass.
attorney tell us if it passed or didn't? We had that
Failed.
once before,
Failed.
and we never did get notice as to whether it passed or failed.
The tie vote fails.
Okay, so that it failed.
Correct.
So there'll be no cut.
Job
if-
obstructing the meeting tonight, Mrs.
Correct.
Benson.
Say what?
Motion to approve the next recommendation from the superintendent, high school sections for $87,500.
Second, please.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
What is the...
Hearing none. Have a roll call vote, please.
Point of question. I don't have my list here, and I don't have my... What was the item, please?
High school sections, 7.
Right here.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
Could somebody brief me on that, please?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, the high school students select their classes in their winter, springtime. From that point, the guidance office and principal, they build a schedule based on student selection. Picture, if you will, every semester around 480 different things running in different periods, moving around. The guidance office then has a very difficult task to build a schedule and place students in the classes. From that, about a month ago, I modeled to you of maybe taking 10 sections if I could. And in actuality, as I told you earlier tonight, we met with guidance and the principal, and we settled on 7 sections, not 10. I mentioned a couple to you earlier. I said there was one example of a chemistry class. We're going to collapse 2 into 1, if you will. I believe we have one accounting 2 class not running. I believe there's an art section not running. I believe there are 2 special ed sections we collapsed. So in the end, I think we can take the 7 sections without causing any significant problems at the high school. Each section is around $12,500.
Dr. Thornton, I didn't see that dissertation in the write-up, okay? So I appreciate you coming forward with that. So you feel that, though, you know, we're not cutting an AP course or anything like that, we're just consolidating the courses?
My whole mind, and Dr. Ogier agree, you really don't want to cut the rigor. The more rigor you have, the better off a high school is. You don't cut the rigor, you run the rigorous classes.
Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure that you're doing some consolidation, whatever, and the kids are still going to get the service, and that's what's important, so,
Yes.
fine, I support that.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Larry Cirici.
Yes.
William Mudge.
Yes.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Joe Thompson.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Mel Boyd Benson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Mr. Cerisi.
Mr. Chairman, that actually concludes the list that I...
All right, now.
That concludes the list that I originally proposed.
What about the library clerks and the other?
I believe that brings us to a $330,000 total cut at this time of the superintendent's recommendations. At this time, I will offer a motion to adjourn.
Second on that, please.
We have a lot of business here to complete.
It's not 10 yet. I'll second that motion. All in favor of adjourning? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Roll call
No.
vote.
Yeah, roll call.
Roll call vote on the adjournment.
William Mudge.
No.
Kimberly Page.
Not until 10.
We didn't hear you, Mrs. Page.
Said no, not until 10.
Okay.
Joe Thompson.
No.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Bill Boyd Benson.
No.
Larry Cerisi.
Yes.
Motion fails 4-2.
Well, you guys are really in lockstep, aren't you, and everything?
Mr. Welch?
You got to be ashamed of yourselves.
Mr. Welch?
Yes, Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Mudge, could we go back up to supplies?
Yes, sir.
And could we come up with a reasonable figure? I don't think it's going to pass at 350. Come up with something that's a compromise?
Well, I'm going to compromise at $275,000 right now, solely because that
All
was
right.
acknowledged as a number at the meeting, wasn't it? Am I correct? Wasn't that acknowledged?
It was.
It
Now-
was
now
acknowledged,
listen.
and I will come back in with that.
Don't make a motion yet. Let me ask
You
you
make a
something.
motion.
I will. You just said what? 275? We already
275.
chopped 60. Is that correct? Or didn't we?
Yes, we chopped
We
it.
chopped 60. So I'm going to suggest, I'm going to move that we chop $200,000 from the supply budget.
Additional.
Additional. 200,000.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Is there a second?
Yes,
So-
I second it.
So your total would then be $260,000 cut.
That's correct.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
Could I amend the motion, please?
No.
We haven't voted on it.
Sure, why not? Amend the motion, Bill.
I'd like to amend the motion to include that the superintendent of school provides a complete list of expenditures for the remaining amount of funds that will be spent.
Mrs. Page?
Need a second?
You can also, you can withdraw your second and just make a new motion, rather than having to vote twice for everything on the amendment.
Well, it appears that I tried to before and I couldn't get it in.
Procedures, but we have our attorney there. We'd like for her to make a ruling on that.
Dr.
According to Robert's Rules of Order, you're correct, but I want to
A ruling
get
on,
the,
I guess, a ruling on what? I don't know.
well, let's go
What
on.
Mrs. Page just said? In other words, withdraw your motion and make one motion?
I will with,
Wants a list.
do you want, Mrs. Page, do you want one motion or two motions?
We only need one.
I mean, I'm happy to to drop my amendment, make the cut, if I'm allowed to make a motion to have the other information provided to me.
You're removing your motion, and Mr. Thompson, you're removing your motion?
No, he's not. I will remove my motion.
I'm going to keep my motion for 200,000, and then right after that, we're going to raise our hand and ask for a motion to get some information, which Bill Mudge is going to make a motion on.
All right, so you made your motion, Mr. Mudge, you seconded the motion?
Yes, ma'am.
And there's a motion on the floor to cut
100,000 additional
$200,000 additional dollars in supplies.
from the 60,000,
Could we say that for a total of $270,000?
260.
It's 260, excuse me.
Is there any more discussion? Mr. Mudge, any more discussion?
No, thank you.
Mrs. Benson, any discussion?
No, I'm waiting for Dr. Thornton. I think he had his hand up. I want to hear what he has to say.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. You can certainly cut $200,000 more. I'm just going to get on the record. We're going to have problems. So get on the record now.
George Bush once said, "Show me the beef,"
We don't
which
want
I've been
you-
asking for 2 weeks. First George Bush.
All right.
Could you restate what you said, Dr. Thornton?
He doesn't recommend.
Say what, Dr. Thornton?
I stand by my recommendation,
And what is your recommendation? We've discussed this.
$60,000.
$80,000.
60.
Uh-huh.
Let's save sports. Let's
So,
save each program.
can I? Yes.
So in other words, if we wrote this down, I think we need more guidance from you because you're the one who runs the day-to-day activities of the school. I'm serious about this. We got to cut, but to hold pat on something, you know, and you say you stand by your recommendation.
I guess what I'm saying is here, this is what I would call a paper cut. It'll look good cutting in the springtime. It'll haunt you next spring when we run out of stuff.
That's what I was waiting for you to say and not stand by.
What supplies would we be running out of?
that gets to the list, which is coming after this vote.
Mr. Draper?
Depends on where we apply the cuts. If we apply cuts to school supplies, it could have impact usually towards the end of the year. When compared to actuals, and this is a distinction that we made for the budget subcommittee, when we budget a dollar value per child. Over the course of the year, we implement freezes, we implement budget transfers, and we make adjustments based on utility expenditures and costs and consumption. Those things happen throughout the course of the year. That's why the budget's delivered with actuals. We budget to a level that we think is appropriate based on the number of students we expect. Over the course of the year, that's adjusted. If we adjust to where we think our actual costs are this year, and we have impact to our utility cost, if we have additional students, if we have other things that are unforeseen that happen to the district, we'll be in a vulnerable position.
Comment, please.
Sure.
The information I have, and I've submitted to you before, is that, in fact, your budget submission, if I can find the thing, you budgeted for supplies, and I'm not suggesting to cut that at all. $456,000 for school supplies and general supplies. How did I get that number? I got that number by going to your budget, multiplying the number of students by the allocations that you were providing in the first grade, second grade, up to the high school. That comes out to $460,000. I am not suggesting that those are the items that be cut. I am suggesting that you have another, you have $400 and some odd thousand more than the 210 budget. In 3 line items, again, general supplies, other supplies, and technology supplies represented a $350,000. Now, that's only 3 items out of 30. That's 3 items out of 30. The total 30 items are a $400,000+ increase. There's plenty of money for supplies. And again, I am willing to change that if somebody can show me the beef, show me the need, show me what can't be done if we don't get this money.
Can we call the question?
Call a question.
I still have a question of Mr. Draper. Mr. Draper, this could be things like janitorial supplies?
Those are included in the supplies, yes.
Okay. Mrs. Benson, as a former teacher and in this system...
Did a good job of it, Mr. Welch.
I'm going to rely upon your information going forward. Has there ever been a time when teachers have ever said they had enough supplies for their students?
There's never enough in education, but there are times when teachers must be conservative and not let children waste.
As a teacher, I would think that you would be responsive to the needs of the students.
I am
and their
responsive to the
supplies.
needs of the children, but I am not responsive to waste. And there can be a lot of waste. So if you think you're backing me in a corner, brother, let's go for it.
I'm not backing you in a corner. I'm just asking you for your information, Mrs. Benson.
That's their needs.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Kimberly Page.
No.
Joe Thompson.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
No.
Mel Boyd Benson.
Yes, because we have to learn how to conserve. Teachers never get enough. Is that funny to you?
Larry Cerisi.
No.
William Mudge.
Yes?
It's very interesting.
Motion fails 3-3.
Motion failed, 3-3. Mrs. Page.
Make a motion that we eliminate the social worker who we have not hired for $67,500.
A second motion.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Yes, Mrs. Benson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. There is a need for a social worker, and we have to make a cut. But as a former teacher that you referred to, and I gave myself credit for being a good one. Social workers are very important to the children's education. I think I was the first one in budget hearing that agreed with Dr. Thornton that we do need social workers if we are going to educate the complete child. I gave out the example of the school that won the first round of the Race to the Top and got the extra money from the federal government to put these programs in. And three things they stated: the home, the school, and the community. And way things are going, and some of the discipline problems that we've had to have and deal with, social workers are very important. So I'm going to be reluctantly following the advice of the superintendent with his cut onto this, but it's not nothing I enjoy doing because they are very important. And I see it every day. Boys and girls walking the streets, high school age, not in school. And if we had that extra social worker, they could be in the community and see these things. So reluctantly, I will take Dr. Thornton's recommendation on that.
Any more discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Joe Thompson.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
No.
Mel Boyd Benson.
Superintendent's recommendation.
Yes.
That a yes?
Yes.
Larry Cerisi.
Yes.
William Mudge.
Yes.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1.
I have a change, please.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Wait just a minute before.
I have a...
There's a motion on the table.
Mr. Chair.
We'll take a
point of
vote on
order.
the motion.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
There's a motion. Roll call vote. Roll call vote on the motion
To adjourn, Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Mel Boyd Benson.
No, I have a procedural question I need to ask.
Larry Cerisi.
Yes.
William Mudge.
No. Too much
Billy
business
Page.
remaining.
Yes. Joe Thompson.
Yes.
Motion
Passes
passes.
4-2.
Would it be possible for me to ask the attorney a question?
Absolutely. Go ahead. All right.